So were you able to pay attention to Mr. Clearman's position?
Yeah. Yes.
So there we saw Mr. Clearman open the door and then kick open the door and then close the door, right?
Yes.
Let's play it from where we're at, 132 to 136. All right, we stopped at 136. We stopped at 137. So by now, the Clearman vehicle is out of view of this camera, right?
Yes.
Okay. And this video clip continues for about a minute and 24 seconds, right?
I believe that's a good estimate, yes.
A little bit less than 1.5 minutes, this video continues. Until about 3 minutes total, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And is there anything of any evidentiary interest that occurs in this video from this point on till the end?
Not that I've observed.
There's really nothing of any value to this case for that 1 minute and 30 or 1 minute and 23 seconds, right?
Documenting traffic is what the rest of that video does.
Okay.
Driving on Brady Street.
Now, counsel. Now I'm going to go back to the other video that we saw yesterday. I like everybody in this case. Bad decisions were made all of them. That's exhibit number 34. I'm not sold on this being justified yet. Sold on it being justified because they something. But the reality is, had he taken his beating like crowds suggested, and they drove off, and reported the side of the lead, two things would have happened. One, the police would have probably never followed up with a random punch in the face or urban area. Yeah, we'll figure it out. But they'd all, be alive. Thankfully, that would be the preferable option. For me, I would prefer to alive rather than dead. Driving erratically or something like that. This guy has ridden his bike on instead of having to roll up and punch something. He would have been followed and he wouldn't have had to shoot the guy. So another instance where the Miyagi go mantra, best way to find there is a better anybody. Running away is yeah, and the wife very well could be responsible for egging it on. We don't know what's happening inside the car, but she was the driver.
All right, well, they work out the situation there in the courtroom.
All
Take a
right.
break. More live
I'm still trying to get off this. All this is a bunch of commercials on this stream. We've got to find the court's live stream. And I'm still going through everything trying to find it. I think that it may be down. Turn my shoes off. That's off. 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 This is nonstop. The one channel that has live I found is Nick Rikitas, and he got a cease and desist last night from doing any more.
By the way, you're going to see some pixels very graphically fall to the floor by the end of this video. There we go. Can we replay that? Okay, replay that 9 seconds just for the record and stop here at 13 seconds. So, right there in that video, we didn't see Mr. Kiernan use the turn signal, right?
Uh-oh. They got her. Not certain if she was turning right. It would have been on the opposite side. From what I just watched, I couldn't see one.
Okay. You want me to rewind?
I can double check to make sure that I would be able to see one at all.
And now it's like, oh, she didn't use a turn signal.
While watching that, I'm not noticing a right turn.
We saw that she had a left turning signal. They would have pulled her out of the car and shot her like Dante Red. And then at 13 seconds, you see the brake lights on the vehicle. And you can abrupt stop. Can you see it from where you're at, Detective? Is it in the bike?
You know what? I can't get it right now. So watch this. Let's do this. That's not it. Let's see if I do.
Rise in prices.
No.
Artifact in there. A phantom car existing.
Oh, I'm so mad right now. Oh my gosh.
Can I look at this closer?
Thank God they're not driving. Their Article 4 free and
This is absolutely driving me insane to see here.
That angle, it looks like the portion of the vehicle is now in the bike lane that is started there. There's like a dotted line and then a solid line for the bike lane.
Now, as a law enforcement officer, you're familiar with traffic laws, right?
Pacer. Ah. You got to sign in with your lawyer stuff. Who has lawyer stuff in Wisconsin?
This judge, he does not want any of this bullshit. He wants this trial over. She also comes in very close proximity to Mr. Edgecomb, right? No, after.
Yes, Mr. Edgecomb's on the sidewalk when he stops.
No.
You're gonna have your own guy testify to why he got out of the bike lane onto the sidewalk. You don't need this cop to do this. It's a waste of your time. Now, a vehicle, you're an officer of the law, a vehicle can be considered a weapon, right?
Yes.
Good job.
Sustained advance restrictions that requires the
Oh, wow. So, crime TV or law and crime, let's put everything behind a premium paywall is what's happened. And they've sent cease and desist orders to everybody else that's streaming this, which they can't. I don't know how they've got a stream going because we can't get into the courts. Supposedly we can.
This guy's like trying to climb the tree, and there's a bully up at the top. He keeps kicking him in the face, and he gets up to the branch.
This is my lawyer talking about why I wasn't actually going all that fast.
Let's see where this go. Where do we go here? So I've got so I got that from Wisconsin, but it has no sound. I don't know what's going on. Oh, there we go.
All right, Madam Clerk, if you'd announce the date.
Okay, the next court date is January 24th at 10 o'clock for
That's
jury
just
trial.
That's hilarious. I just want to watch that moment. I just want to watch the moment of defense, your witness, and be like, yeah, it was good.
Court, which isn't playing anymore. Great.
I'm going with my theory. He told him that he did it, and they just were looking for procedural defects that they could make it capitalize on and found none.
Chandler didn't want to testify. I mean, it can't get any worse. And he does fancy himself a spinner of lies. So, you know, I guess because he told his counsel.
Why isn't this working? Why is this not searchable?
Oh boy.
You know what? We're gonna do another one.
What if he came back and said yes? It was worth it.
I guess, congratulations.
I'm so mad right now. I'm so sorry. This was supposed to be up. It's supposed to be good. But no, it's not. It's a complete mess.
He's reaching into his pocket to grab a knife that will definitely be able to see as 1 pixel.
Just like basic cut and paste, like a big Rambo knife. This is part of the shoulders VAR. This is the enhanced version.
Causes the death of another human being with the intent to kill.
Oh, they're going to jury right now. Hang on a second. Let's do this.
Find the defendant guilty of this offense. The state must prove by evidence which satisfies me beyond a reasonable doubt that the following 2 elements were present. Number 1, the defendant caused the death of Halderson. Number 2, cause means that the defendant's act was a substantial factor in producing the death. Number 2, the defendant acted with the intent to kill Bart A. Halderson. Intent to kill means that the defendant had the mental purpose to take the life of another human being or was aware that his conduct was practically certain to cause the death of another human being. While the law requires that the defendant acted with intent to kill, it does not require that the intent exist for any particular length of time before the act is committed. The act need not be brooded over, considered, or reflected upon for a week, a day, an hour, or even a minute. There need not be any appreciable time between the formation of the intent and the act. The intent to kill may be formed at any time before
This
the
is
act,
Chandler
including the instant before
Halderson.
the act, and must continue to exist at the time of the act.
You know, where's my headset?
You cannot look into a person's mind to find intent. Intent to kill must be found, if found at all, from the defendant's acts, words, and statements, if any, and from all the facts and circumstances in this case bearing upon intent.
I love it when
Intent
judges and
should not be
lawyers wear
confused with motive.
bow ties.
While proof of intent is necessary to a conviction, proof of motive is not. Motive refers to a person's reason for doing something. While motive may be shown as a circumstance to aid in establishing the guilt of a defendant, the state is not required to prove motive on the part of a defendant in order to convict. Evidence of motive does not by itself establish guilt. You should give it the weight you believe it deserves under all of the circumstances. If you are satisfied beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant caused the death of Bart A. Halderson with the intent to kill, you should find the defendant guilty of first-degree intentional homicide. If you are not so satisfied, you must find the defendant not guilty. Count 2 of the amended information alleges that the above-named defendant, Chandler M. Halderson, on and or between July 1, 2021 and July 8, 2021, in Dane County, Wisconsin, did deliver written and or oral communication with intent to induce a false belief that the defendant had knowledge of the whereabouts or physical condition of a missing person, Bart A. Halderson, contrary to section 946.48 sub 1. To this charge, Chandler M. Halderson has entered a plea of not guilty, which means that the state must prove every element of the offense charged beyond a reasonable doubt. Section 946.48 of the Criminal Code of Wisconsin is violated by one who sends, delivers, and or causes to be transmitted to another any written or oral communication with intent to induce a false belief that the sender has knowledge of the whereabouts of a missing person. Before you may find the defendant guilty of this offense, the state must prove by evidence which satisfies you beyond a reasonable doubt that the following 2 elements were present. Number 1, the defendant sent, delivered, or caused to be transmitted a written or oral communication to Dane County Sheriff's deputies. Number 2, the defendant did so with the intent to induce a false belief that he had knowledge of the whereabouts of a missing person, specifically Bart A. Halderson. This means that the defendant had the mental purpose to cause Dane County Sheriff deputies to believe that he had knowledge of the whereabouts of a missing person, specifically Bart A. Halderson, or was aware that his conduct was practically certain to cause Dane County Sheriff deputies to believe that he had knowledge of the whereabouts of a missing person, specifically Bart A. Halderson. You cannot look into a person's mind to find intent. Intent must be found, if found at all, from the defendant's acts, words, and statements, if any, and from all the facts and circumstances in the case bearing upon intent. If you are satisfied beyond a reasonable doubt that the 2 elements of this offense have been proved, you should find the defendant guilty. If you are not so satisfied, you must find the defendant not guilty. Count 3 of the amended information alleges that the above-named defendant, Chandler M. Halderson, on and or between July 1, 2021 and July 8, 2021, in Dane County, Wisconsin, did dismember the corpse of Bart A. Halderson with the intent to conceal a crime, contrary to Stat 940.11, sub 1. To this charge, Chandler M. Halderson has entered a plea of not guilty, which means the state must prove every element of the offense charged beyond a reasonable doubt. Section 940.11 sub 1 of the Criminal Code of Wisconsin is violated by one who mutilates, disfigures, or dismembers a corpse with intent to conceal a crime or avoid apprehension, prosecution, or conviction for a crime. Before you may find the defendant guilty of this offense, the state must prove by evidence which satisfies you beyond a reasonable doubt that the following 2 elements were present. Number 1, the defendant dismembered a corpse. Number 2, the defendant dismembered a corpse with the intent to conceal a crime. This requires that the defendant acted with the purpose to conceal a crime. You cannot look into a person's mind to find intent. Intent must be found, if found at all, from the defendant's acts, words, and statements, if any, and from all the facts and circumstances in this case bearing upon intent. If you are satisfied beyond a reasonable doubt that both elements of this offense have been proved, you should find the defendant guilty. If you are not so satisfied, you must find the defendant not guilty. Count 4 of the amended information alleges that the above-named defendant, Chad M. Halderson, on and or between July 1, 2021 and July 8, 2021 in Dane County, Wisconsin, did hide the corpse of Bart A. Halderson with the intent to conceal a crime, contrary to Wistat section 940.11 sub 1. To this charge, Chandler M. Halderson.
I can't
has
change the
entered a
title
plea of
in
not guilty, which means
YouTube.
the state must
So if
prove
you're here
every
from
element
YouTube
of the
and you're
offense
like, where is
charged
it? I'm
beyond
sorry,
a
it's been
reasonable doubt.
changed.
Section 940.11 sub 2 of the Criminal Code of Wisconsin is violated by one who hides or
God, never
buries
so
a corpse
upset.
with intent to conceal a crime or avoid apprehension, prosecution, or conviction for a crime. Before you may find the defendant guilty of this offense, the state must prove by evidence which satisfies you beyond a reasonable doubt that the following 2 elements were present. Number 1, the defendant hid a corpse. Number 2, the defendant hid a corpse with intent to conceal a crime. This requires that the defendant acted with the purpose to conceal a crime. You cannot look into a person's mind to find intent. Intent must be found, if found at all, from the defendant's acts, words, and statements, if any, and from all the facts and circumstances in this case bearing upon intent. If you are satisfied beyond a reasonable doubt that both elements of this offense have been proved, you should find the defendant guilty. If you are not so satisfied, you must find the defendant not guilty.
Crap.
Count 5 of the amended information alleges that the above-named defendant, Chandler M. Halderson, on and or between July 1, 2021 and July 8, 2021 in Dane County, Wisconsin, did cause the death of Krista R. Halderson with intent to kill that person, contrary to Wistat section 940.01 sub 1 sub A. To this charge, Chandler M. Halderson has entered a plea of not guilty, which means the state must prove every element
Chandler's
of the
had
offense
a really
charged beyond a
bad
reasonable doubt. First-degree
defense.
intentional homicide,
And,
as
you
defined
know, she
in
tries.
section
The woman here, the blonde
940.01
you
of the
see,
Criminal Code of Wisconsin,
she is
is
a public
committed by
defender.
one who causes the death of
And I
another
would
human
think-
being with the intent to kill that person.
Okay, well, there's
or
a legal
another.
theory about this.
Before you may find
Legal
the
theory
defendant
is
guilty of this
Chandler
offense,
gets
the state
convicted.
must prove
He
by
appeals
evidence which satisfies you
constitutional
beyond a
ground
reasonable doubt
that he was not
that the
allowed
following
to see
2
his
elements
accusers.
were present.
They had people on
Number
the
1,
bench that wore
the
their
defendant
masks
caused the death of Krista R. Halderson.
and never took them off.
Cause means the
That
defendant's
is what I would love to see happen. I'd love to see that
in
question
producing the
answered.
death. 2, the
The
defendant
other
acted
chance of
with
appeal
the
is
intent
for
to
a
kill
high-profile
Krista R.
case like
Halderson.
this.
Intent to
Usually they
kill
give you a
means that the
high-profile
defendant had the mental
defense
purpose
attorney,
to take
which
the
is
life of another human
they
being, or was
call up
aware
the guy,
that his conduct
you know,
was
in
practically
town that
certain
that's
to cause the death
the
of
defense
another
attorney.
human being.
It's like, oh, you're being called
While
into
the law
court, you're
requires
getting paid
that the
$20 an hour.
defendant acted with
This guy's
intent
like,
to
but I
kill,
charge
it does
$500
not
an hour. They're gonna be like,
require
yeah,
that
but the
the
judge
intent
really wants you to
exist
be the
for any
defense of
particular
this.
length of time.
You've got to
before
go
the act
to the.
is
You got to
committed.
answer that call.
The act need not be
Is that not
brooded
something
over,
else?
considered, or reflected upon for a week, a day, an hour, or even a minute. There need not be any appreciable time between the formation of the intent and the act. The intent to kill may be formed at any time before the act, including the instant before the act, and must continue to exist at the time of the act. You cannot look into a person's mind to find intent. Intent must be found, if found at all, from the defendant's acts, words, and statements, if any, and from all the facts and circumstances in this case bearing upon intent. Intent should not be confused with motive. While proof of intent is necessary to a conviction, proof of motive is not. Motive refers to a person's reason for doing something. While motive may be shown as a circumstance to aid in establishing the guilt of a defendant, the state is not required to prove motive on the part of a defendant in order to convict. Evidence of motive does not by itself establish guilt. You should give it the weight you believe it deserves under all of the circumstances. If you are satisfied beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant caused the death of Krista R. Halderson with the intent to kill, you should find the defendant guilty of first-degree intentional homicide. If you are not so satisfied, you must find the defendant not guilty. Count 6 of the amended information alleges that the above-named defendant, Chandler M. Halderson, on and or between July 1, 2021 and July 8, 2021 in Dane County, Wisconsin, did deliver written and or oral communication with intent to induce a false belief that the defendant had knowledge of the whereabouts or physical condition of a missing person, Krista R. Halderson, contrary to Wistat Section 946.48 sub 1. To this charge, Chandler M. Halderson has entered a plea of not guilty, which means the state must prove every element of this offense charged beyond a reasonable doubt. Section 946.48 of the Criminal Code of Wisconsin is
a part of the
violated
law
by
that you
one who
never get to
sends,
see.
delivers, and or causes to be transmitted to another any written or oral communication with intent to induce a false belief that the sender has knowledge of the whereabouts of a missing person. Before you may find the defendant guilty of this offense, the state must prove by evidence which satisfies you beyond a reasonable doubt that the following 2 elements were present. Number 1, the defendant sent, delivered, or caused to be transmitted a written or oral communication to the Dane County Sheriff's Department deputies. Number 2, the defendant did so with the intent to induce a false belief that he had knowledge of the whereabouts of a missing person, specifically Krista R. Halderson. This means that the defendant had the mental purpose to cause Dane County Sheriff deputies to believe that he had knowledge of the whereabouts of a missing person, specifically Krista R. Halderson, or was aware that his conduct was practically certain to cause Dane County Sheriff deputies to believe that he had knowledge of the whereabouts of a missing person.
Guys, I know as interesting as this is.
You cannot look into a person's mind to find intent. Intent must be
I'm
found,
going to change this
found
real
at
quick
all,
because I found something
from
I
the
really
defendant's
want to
acts,
share.
words and statements, if any, and from all the facts and circumstances in this case
Where'd this
bearing
go?
upon intent.
Share, stop screen, share, no, share. Is that it?
Dollars. At this time, the county would make
is.
alternative
Okay.
offers. Speeding 11 to
There's
15
way too much
over,
talking
that's a
going on.
4-point
Hang on.
violation. I would offer to amend that to $250, or I'm sorry, I would offer to amend that to a $200 fine. Or alternatively, speeding 1 to 10 over, that's a 3-point violation, and I would raise the fine to $300. So different alternative offers with varying points and
Is this
citations.
on right?
So it'd be 19
All right, hang
over,
on,
which is
sit
a
here.
4-pointer at 4 points. 1 to 10 over, 3 points at $300.
The Edgecomb feed, illustrious
Yes.
meme. I'm sorry, the
Okay.
Edgecomb feed has
Mr.
been
Stoyanovich, you
shut
can
down
accept
all
one of
across
those 2
YouTube.
offers or set it for trial. It's up to you.
Let's see here.
Okay.
on
I
the
was
inside.
wondering, so is there any way, because I'm actually in the car business, and if I have any violations like that on my record, it kind of messes up the company's insurance a little bit. And you know, that's something that they're really, really strict on. Is there any way that we can some way, somehow, you know, I know what I was doing was wrong, but can we change it to a non-moving violation some way? I would be willing to pay a bigger fine. It's just like, I really can't afford to have that on my record just because of the line of work that I'm in. Like I said, I'd be willing to pay a bigger fine.
Well, that's up to the county if they wish to make that kind of offer.
Yeah, the issue with that, Your Honor, is that the statutes give a maximum amount of fine for the non-moving violations, and the
see
non-moving
this,
violations that I think that we used most often in this
This is
case
like,
are defective speedometer, 2-point
This is
violation.
just Wisconsin.
Based
a
on some
speeding
of the
ticket
facts,
right
I'm
now,
not really
what
sure.
we're
I
talking
think
about.
that would be appropriate.
But do you see the
in
judge up
any
here,
case.
Christopher D?
Either way, though, last
Y'all
I
see
checked
that-
in the
this guy, right?
statutes, the
Do you
max
see
fine
that
is
portrait behind
$200.
him?
So it wouldn't necessarily mean a higher fine in this
Christopher
case.
D has a portrait of himself
I
smiling
understand Mr.
creepily and
Stojanovich's
no
position
shirt
about
on.
the insurance. That being said,
Is this not
based
just
on kind of the
really, really
citation
freaky
facts that I'm
bizarre?
seeing, I would stand by our offer. That being said, I wouldn't really have an issue lowering
Completely
the monetary
freaky
amount
bizarre,
for either
right?
of them. Like the speeding 1 to 10 over, I would lower it to 250, and the speeding 11 to 15 over, I would lower to 150.
I mean,
Look at this.
for me, I'm willing to pay a little bit more money just so I don't, because I work at a dealership, and I really, really don't want them to see one of those on my record. It just kind of messes me up a little bit. My HR was talking to me about that, and we got a new insurance company. They're just super, super strict about it. Some guys lost their job because of things like this, and I just, like I said, I'd be willing to pay a bigger fine if we can make it happen.
Well, that doesn't seem to be in the cards, Mr. Stanovich. Your option is to accept one of those offers, or you could take it to trial.
Right. Is there any way, I mean, I've seen the city attorney before, in Milwaukee. I mean, I know this is totally different, but they changed the speeding ticket to a window tint ticket, just to be able to max out the fine. Would that be possible?
One moment.
Oh, okay.
One moment. Sorry.
I'm just trying to do everything I can. I'm sorry. I just
So
don't
look
want
at
to
this.
mess up my record
I feel bad for this guy now,
even more than it is.
right? So, do you get a speeding ticket?
I would also offer failure to obey sign, 346.01 sub 1. That's also a 3-point violation. I would still make that, not seeing the penalty.
This guy
for
here
it,
just
but
got out of
I
law
would make
school,
that $250.
He's a young dude,
It's still,
but he
I'm
works
not
for the
sure
DA's office.
if that's still a moving. I think that still sounds more like a moving violation, but I think it sounds better than speeding.
Well, it is a moving, yeah.
Isn't there something where it like interfere with sign or
This
signal?
lady here would be
Could we
the
potentially
court
do
clerk.
that?
Yeah, but interfere with signals is a 0-point violation, and I'm not really sure if that's really.
I would argue
fits
right
in this
now,
case.
this guy should be arguing. I didn't do it. Where's
I mean,
the
is there any
where's the
way
proof
you
I did
guys
it?
could help me out a little bit? I know I was
The burden of
speeding. I
proof
know
is
it's
on
not
the
best thing,
government
but
to prove
just
that
for
I
my
did
work,
this.
It looks terrible. That's the only thing that I could lose my position over this, and I mean, I would hate to do that. I got a house, I got a mortgage, car payment, all that kind of good stuff. Or a speeding ticket, I mean.
Give him driving school.
Well, I don't know, Mr. Stanovich. I think you have to try your luck at trial or what. It just doesn't seem to be in the cards.
There's no way you guys would be able to do me a favor here?
Do me a favor.
At
Here's the
25
thing:
to
these guys
29
are all
over
dead
on a
inside.
highway,
These judges and
that's-
everything.
they're-
I mean, look, he's
favors don't
getting
get that
portraits
big.
commissioned of himself here
No,
without a shirt
I
on.
mean, I get
I'd be
it. Like
terrified
I
to
said,
go into
I
trial.
know I'm wrong in this case.
I'd be like, I don't know
what
what's going to
was doing
happen. This
wasn't
guy
right.
might
I'm
offer
just-
me some. Oh man,
It just
he's
looks
drinking
terrible
Mountain
for
Dew,
my
too. You
job.
know
I
that
mean,
that's
if I
bad
didn't
news.
work at a dealership,
So
where
anyway,
I'm around
this guy
cars
is
and
that
stuff
an
like that all the
urn?
time, and
Oh
I'm
my
under
gosh, look,
strict
this
insurance
clerk here
through
has an
them,
urn.
I wouldn't really.
There's
I wouldn't care. I
video
mean, I
of
would have
a
accepted the
dead
offer right away. I mean, you guys are more than generous. It's just
casket
I'm in a
back
pickle
there.
here.
I understand, but so would you
I
like
like
to set
how
it for
she
trial? See what
is
happens,
in a
or
library.
accept one of the
See
offers?
this?
Could
It's like
we
a really
do this?
nice,
Could
like,
we
courtroom
reschedule
or,
this Zoom
house.
meeting
She
just
could be in
so
the
I
court.
can talk to my
She's in the
HR,
court library.
and then I could see with
It's all
them.
about making
And
the
I mean, could we
background look good.
reschedule this
And
for
how come
60 days?
none of them
I'm
can
actually
get their
going on
camera
vacation
straight?
for 2 weeks.
The
next
lady
week.
with the deceased
Yeah,
back
that's
here,
fine.
she has her camera straight.
Want to talk to him?
You know
I don't have a
why?
problem with that.
Feng Shui.
Yeah,
That's
just so I
straight.
can talk to the ladies
But
upstairs.
this and this, I
It'll
love
be
how
the
they
week
both
of
go in
March
opposite
14th.
directions. This is like those two have been
Let me
fixed.
check my schedule 1 second.
Look at that. Look, you see his. Oh, we gotta get a screenshot.
Week of March 14th. Do we have anything later
My
than that by
screenshot's on a
chance? I mean, it
timer.
could be just 1 week later.
Can't do it the next week. I'll have to,
Hold
you'll have
on.
to pick sometime that week.
Yeah, now it wants to do
14th.
one.
Would it be the 14th, 15th, or
Boom.
16th, sir?
Yeah.
Let's just do the
Yes.
let's just do the 14th and get it out of the way.
Okay, would you, I'll set you at 9
work?
o'clock.
That's perfect.
All right. So that's by Zoom, same Zoom as today.
Okay. Am I gonna get something in the mail too?
No.
No,
No?
not for, no, just, if you receive something in the mail, just keep that because it has the Zoom information on it.
The Zoom
Okay,
information.
so same login and everything like
What
that.
society we've
Yes.
gone to. Well, you can
Okay,
tell
thank
this
you,
guy,
guys.
like you know, saying about
Okay,
was the
take care, sir.
look at that. Tell me that's not a
You too,
government
bud.
file cabinet. Now they're good. Those file cabinets will last till the apocalypse. Or, oh, where's my camera? Boom. No, I can't do the full page. There. Boom. Yes.
Judge,
Oh, he's
Gary
kind of
wasn't
turning like he is in that
emailed.
picture.
He was hoping to get in soon.
Joel?
I want to save this.
No, Gary,
Oh, Gary?
yes.
Oh no.
Well, I see that, but I don't see his client.
Oh, okay, I don't know anything about his client. Maybe his client's in custody, I don't know.
Could be coming from a DOC, I think.
I mean, if I hadn't seen this guy, this is Wisconsin
And
feed.
it's actually not really his client. It's he's standby.
Okay,
Oh my gosh, dude, that is so weird.
Fair, how are you?
Hey, Judge, doing great. How are you?
Fine.
Okay, go live.
I want to call the Blake cases first.
Milwaukee County versus Kyle
Oh my
Blake.
gosh. Okay, he's in jail. This guy's in jail, right?
28694
Is that what
and
they said?
95 appearances.
It's a nice
It appears
jail.
by
Look at
Michael
him. He's got
Staskunas.
a suit on.
Attorney John Bear appears on behalf of Kyle Scott Blake. Good morning, Your Honor.
Oh, they put an
All right,
attorney
good
up there.
morning. And now just proceed on this.
They also put his bar number.
Thanks, Judge. I'd ask for a plea sentencing. I'm not sure if Attorney Staskunas emailed me an offer. I know he has in a few cases on this one in particular, but I do need a chance to at least review,
I'm so upset
the
though.
description.
Still, I don't
and
have
then work out an offer.
Edgecomb.
And I hope we can do it by the next court date.
All right, I'm gonna go back.
I'm confident we're gonna at least try. to
Guys,
do
I'm
that.
sorry here, man. This is a horrible.
Is this for
This
Mr.
is
Kyle
such
Blake?
a crap shoot
Yeah.
here.
Okay, one moment.
So John, there was some,
Okay, I just stopped that. Then go back over here to the original. Nobody wants to hear their speeding tickets, right? Let's see about this guy who shot his parents.
Opportunity the witness had for observing and for knowing the matters the witness testified about, the reasonableness of the witness's testimony, the apparent
These are jury
intelligence of the
instructions.
witness, bias or prejudice, if any has been shown, possible motives for falsifying testimony, and all other facts and circumstances during the trial which tend either to support or to discredit the testimony. Then give to the testimony of each witness the weight you believe it should receive. There's no magic way for you to evaluate the testimony. Instead, you should use your common sense and experience. In everyday life, you determine for yourselves the reliability of things people say to you. You should do the same thing here. A defendant
Guys,
in a
I'm gonna start
criminal
doing
case has the absolute
NFTs
constitutional
because maybe I'll be
right
better at that than I am getting a
not
stupid
to
live stream
testify.
going.
The defendant's decision not to testify must not be considered by you in any way and must not influence your verdicts in any manner. Consider carefully the closing arguments of the attorneys, but their arguments and conclusions and opinions are not evidence. Draw your own conclusions from the evidence and decide upon your verdicts according to the evidence under these instructions given to you by the court. This time I will invite the state to present its closing argument.
Are these gonna be closing arguments by the state?
And there's HDMI left on.
This will be
the-
good. So remember, this guy killed his parents, supposedly. That's what they're claiming. He killed his parents because he wasn't in college, and they found out he wasn't in college. So instead of just being like, yeah, I didn't want to just punch you guys, he got a gun, he shot him,
I always
cut him
start
up with a
closing
saw,
arguments in this
didn't even go through the joint. He went through the bone, then buried them on his
Yes.
girlfriend's
If any
farm,
of the attorneys, either throughout the trial,
and then had phone
or during
sex with her,
closings
like the
today
next
from
day.
either side, myself, Mr. Brown, or the defense, misstate a fact or evidence, you should go with your collective memories. You guys are the jury. We've sat with this case for months, had meetings about it, talked about it, read things about it, and sometimes not intentionally, but sometimes people, misremember something or think of one thing they read. So please use your collective memories as jurors to determine what you heard and what you saw. Additionally, it should be the written law that the judge just read and that you will get a copy of that should determine how you process and think of the law. For years, I've listened to attorneys where prosecutors have basically belittled the burden of proof and where the defense
I don't know
has
if I
built it
like
up
her
to be
outfit.
something
What do
that
y'all
can
think?
never be overcome or
I don't like
be
this. It's
overcome by
like
video.
it's open.
Neither
Oh,
of those things are
geez.
true. You should look at the
Don't
written
tell me
law
that.
and follow the written law.
Don't tell me.
Second thing I want to say is I want to apologize for all the graphic photos that you folks had to look at the last 3 weeks. I'm sorry I had to show them to you.
Oh yeah, I
But we
definitely
had
don't
to.
approve of that.
They were crime. They were part of a crime,
It's
and because of the charges and
it's
what
a bit
we have to
nipply in
prove
that
beyond a reasonable
courtroom.
doubt, it was
And
necessary for you to
I
look at some of those photos.
she needs
I will
a
promise
bigger
though
jacket,
today I will
maybe,
not be
to
showing
cover
you any of those
this.
anymore.
Oh
There will be
geez,
none of those
no.
photos
Oh
in my
no.
closing.
Oh no.
So every case that comes in is kind of like a puzzle. You have to look at it because obviously you weren't there. But, you know, solving a case and thinking about whether or not a person is guilty or not guilty is like putting together a puzzle. And it's your job as the jury to put that puzzle together. But the question
look,
in
they
this
puzzled
case,
the
or why
picture.
this case is kind of unique, is
I
the person
hate
who
that.
committed the crime
If I was
had
a
8
judge,
days
I'd say
to
no.
spread
You
the
can't
pieces of
have
that puzzle
you
all
can't
over the
have
state of
shows like this.
Wisconsin,
This
or
is
at least of southern Wisconsin.
oh, that aggravates me.
Now, what are the pieces of those puzzle? They're evidence. What is evidence? It's what you saw in this courtroom and what you heard in this courtroom, testimony. People sitting on the witness stand and telling you what they knew. Before we start off going through that evidence, I want to remind you of the background of the events before July 1st of 2021. In June of 2021,
he killed his parents over
Bart
like
and
a
Krista
4th of July weekend.
Halderson lived at 4595 Oak Springs Circle with their son, Chandler Halderson. And at that time in June,
And
they
this
thought that
dude,
their son had an internship with American Family. Although
he
there
might
was
be able to
problems with the payment,
lift.
he hadn't been working there about
He'd have a hard
6,
time
7
lifting
months,
grocery
hadn't been
bags.
paid yet. They thought their son was attending MATC, that he had already earned a solar certificate there, and that he was enrolled in the IT program and was 1 class away from graduating. They also thought that he was going to soon be going to a job in Titusville, Florida at SpaceX. Now, things became a little suspicious to the father, Bart Halderson, who's an accountant. He's wondering, why is a Fortune 500 company not paying my son when he's working there? And for over a year, he was talking to various people at Madison College or MATC about why he hadn't gotten his son's transcripts, why they couldn't get a meeting, why he hadn't received his solar certificate. He had been emailing with these 3 people, Aaron Hoover, Daniel Spieth, and Alyssa Brandt, and been communicating with them. This all kind of comes to a crescendo or to a head the day before Bart is murdered. And on that day, he has a phone call with Omar Job. He starts off this phone call, you can just tell in his voice, he's angry, because he thinks this college has been giving him and his son the runaround for about a year. They're not doing their job. And so he's kind of aggressive at the beginning of this call.
So he's offending his son, and his son returns that favor by
and he learns
shooting
during this call that his son has never earned a solar certificate, that his son is not enrolled in the IT program, that his son owes the college over $1,000, and that Alyssa Brandt, Aaron Hoover, and Daniel Spieth have never worked for Madison College. We see, and that is the background that lead us into the events of July 1st, 2021. On that day is started by Chandler messaging his girlfriend. 7:26 a.m., I hardly slept. 7:27 a.m., I don't know, stuff really hasn't been going well for me lately. So I'm trying to plan for the next thing to fuck me over. We know at 7:27 a.m., his mom leaves for work. She works customer service at Zimbrick. She heads to work.
How'd that happen?
We then know at 7:51 a.m., Chandler messages his girlfriend, yeah, I had a great future planned and it's falling apart.
But
Now,
did
what
she
does he know at
reply?
this point? His dad does send him a text message the day before saying, I spoke to Omar Job. I honestly don't know if that meant anything to Chandler or not, but things are coming to a crescendo. And what we do know is he texts his girlfriend at 1:04 p.m. I overheard that they may go to the cabin with their friends, and I don't know. But I don't know. We also know that on Bart's work calendar, he has a meeting with Chandler and MATC. I don't know if Bart confronted him the night before. I don't know if Bart was going to see how long this ruse or how elaborate this ruse was going to get.
You know nothing.
But this topic was going to be discussed, and there would be a coming to terms.
What is the coming of terms?
We know that at 2:10 p.m., Bart texts Chandler, I'm ready whenever you are. What happened next? Well, we have to look at the evidence.
The evidence
There's a spent
is
shell casing in the basement of the home. There's a bullet fragment, noticeable reddish brown staining, also tests positive for Bart's DNA. That's the bullet that went through and through Bart. The spent casing, and that casing.
This kid did a horrible job
tested
cleaning up the
positive
crime
as
scene,
being
didn't he?
shot from the rifle that belonged to Chandler. We know that Chandler got this rifle about 2 weeks prior.
I did it to a nice
And it was
SKS.
found in the barn on Irwin Road. We know that he got it from his friend Smith, and he was given a bunch of ammo. We also see evidence in the basement of a divot from Ricochet, a fresh divot.
Really?
Also blood. A quadrillion times more likely to be Bart than any other unknown person. More blood. And we know that Chandler texted his mom this. Dad's phone died. Text or call me. Remember, Dad's phone had a charger right there on the desk. You can plug your phone in and within 10 seconds send a text message.
Did you say Dad's
I
phone
think
died?
here there's a half truth.
Wait a minute,
Dad's
Dad died.
Dad died.
Oh,
Oh, and get me soda on your
look
way
at that. I
home.
love it
have
when
an
they
extra
use
hour of
what
work.
I say
We know
after I
Chandler
say
didn't
it.
have a job. He's stalling. Get his mom to take more time.
Brings
Okay, I can't keep
legitimacy
this
to
smiley
my
face.
lawyering.
We know
I
that
don't
she
do.
returns to the house at
You guys know
5:12
not take anything
p.m.
I say as legal advice or
We also know
don't even
that
take
her
it as legal
blood
opinion. Take it as an asshole
is found in the
opinion.
basement as well.
Oops, sorry, I didn't mean to talk like that.
And at 5:11 p.m., Chandler starts writing the following note. Weekend chores, H2O2 and lemon. So that's hydrogen peroxide, which cleans up blood, and lemon, which is a deodorizer.
Really?
Door handles, move your shit upstairs, get a job. Interesting, if he would have just gotten a job, he wouldn't have had to do the prior 3. And clean the floor. That came back in a search warrant for his Google account. We also know at 7:49
Oh,
p.m. he's
that's
in
it.
the shower FaceTiming his girlfriend. So he cleans up.
Oh, that's not what he's
He
doing.
then departs at 8:16 that night.
I can't believe they showed that in court.
We see him there at the Quick Trip. There's the Volvo. There he is. He buys 20 pounds of ice. He arrives back home
Ice.
at 8:29.
20 pounds of ice
p.m.
is not going to do enough.
Then we know that somewhere between 8:30 and 9:30, the neighbor, Steve Greiber, smells a weird burning, a pungent burning that he describes like a pig roast.
That's not
And
pungent.
you heard testimony from Fire Inspector Bill Boswell that unfortunately in his line of work, he's come across many burned bodies, human bodies, and that they do in fact smell like a pig roast.
Now wait a second. Now I'm from Tennessee, man. You
Moving on to
barbecue
Friday,
some pig.
July
It smells
2nd.
good. You start getting hungry.
We know throughout that night, and I'm not re-showing this video, but there's hours of this video. We know that we see burning in the fireplace and the garage light go on and off. All throughout the night. There it is, almost 3 a.m. Until at one point it kind of crescendos and dies down. We also know, looking at the living room of the Halderson home, that right there by the fireplace is a measuring tape. Folks, he measured the parts of the body.
How do we
They
know?
were small enough to fit into the fireplace. And a fan, add oxygen to that fire, make it burn a little bit hotter.
This sounds
that
very
it burned
suspiciously
hot
like
enough that it damaged the
Germany
fireplace.
in
The
the
door shattered
30s.
and the paint is visibly peeling and bubbling. We also know that there's blood evidence.
Well, no, that's not
Evidence
good.
of cleanup from the luminol photos, as well as droplets of blood.
That amazes me that stuff.
We know
covers up.
that blood test, that those stains test positive for blood, and that they test positive for Bart and Krista's DNA.
Yeah, no offense, but they did live there.
There is also some DNA from Chandler. He did cut his foot. We're not disputing that. But he cut his foot in the process of dismembering and blowing and burning his parents, not from playing ball with the dogs.
I've never heard anybody cutting their foot playing
More
ball with
blood.
the dogs, man.
That's also Dad.
That seems so suspicious.
And
What
of
behaviors
course,
are you
on
accusing
top of
people
this
doing?
fireplace that then is made to look all pristine with papers that date to June 23rd, not in the winter from when you would have last actually had a real fire, but from June 23rd, there's a piece of skull. And so Dr. Christina Figueroa Soto gets involved in this case. And she finds bones. She finds lots of bones. They go into this ash trap. I had never even heard of an ash trap before. Clearly, neither had Mr. Halderson. But they find a total of 230 bone fragments. She's able to say 106 of them were substantial enough that she's able to say what they were, that they were human and what parts of the body they're from. 53 from the skull or cranium, 18 from the hands, 24 teeth, 8 vertebrae, 3 long bones, either from arms or legs.
Yeah, that girl was good. Did y'all see that part? That chick? That
There's also
anthropologist
evidence
chick?
in the garage.
By the way, this Chandler
We
guy,
have blood staining.
they had
on
like 2
shoes.
girlfriends on the trial.
That blood staining tests
Or stand.
positive for both Bart
They're
and
both
Krista.
pretty
It is
damn good
identified as
looking.
blood, not just touch DNA. More staining on the shoes. Bart. And in the shoes, they test the inside of the shoes as well to see whose shoes these belong to. They're Chandler's. They're his size 10 and a half. Oh, and he's wearing them right there. Those are the shoes he wore.
Really?
In the garage, there's an axe found,
Well, that's where you usually have.
and there's blood staining on this axe. It's positive for human blood on the hilt. It's positive for human blood on the head. On the head of the axe is both Bart and Krista's DNA. On the hilt is both Bart and Krista's DNA. And look at those numbers.
Why is it Krista
A
being?
quadrillion times more likely to be those two than an unknown person. That's 1,000 times the world's population. And on the
Yeah,
handle,
if you
Bart
believe
and
your
Krista's DNA.
Wisconsin science.
We know at 7:02 a.m. that morning, that's a Friday morning of a holiday weekend, okay? July
Holiday
3rd,
week, 4th of
Friday
July.
morning. A 23-year-old at 7:02 a.m. gets up, drives to Fleet Farm. Again, wearing those shoes. He buys a tarp. There's that tarp, 6x8. That tarp is later found in a trash bin at the Earlwyn Road property out in the woods.
So you need to have all the stuff that everybody else already
He
has.
returns home at 7:31. And we see the following, throughout the day, we see the following text messages between him and his girlfriend.
Oh, geez.
We're set for this. We just need ice. And now hydrogen peroxide, because I stepped on glass. Later, there's more talk, whether she will come or not. But if your mom has an extra bottle, that'd be great. And a Swiffer wet jet. Okay, I do kind of, and there's more talk about whether or not Kat will be there and what time. And Chandler responds, okay, I do kind of need the Swiffer and the peroxide and stuff. Oh, and remember ice. Didn't he just buy 20 pounds of ice less than 12 hours earlier? But he
I
needs
bought
more
20 pounds
ice.
of ice every couple days since my ice
What
maker
does he
doesn't
need that
work.
ice for?
I think it's 10
Well,
pounds
the
of ice.
fireplace broke. We know there's
That freezer ain't holding the body.
We bought lots of ice, and that freezer tested positive for human blood.
Oh, well.
Parts of his mom and his dad were put in that freezer. We know that night on the 2nd, one of Krista's coworkers, Daniel Croninger, came to the house. He had heard that day that Krista no-called and no-showed for work, and that is not the Krista he knew. She had worked there for several years, had never done that before, just not the type of person she was. I mean, of course, I never met her, but she seems a little type A. Like she liked things to be in order, liked things to be a certain way, and was responsible. So he comes over.
Responsible for telling him,
begins to tell
you
the
gotta kill your
tale of,
parents.
yeah, they went up to the cabin. They left this morning with some mystery couple. You know, she probably just forgot to take off, even though her boss testified that she would often take off a year in advance and get the dates right and had dates planned out in the future. But Daniel seems to be somewhat satisfied with that. Here's the problem.
I didn't think she was a murderer either.
Krista's phone is responding to towers in her house.
Where is mine?
She didn't go anywhere. She never left that.
Man, I have
There are
breakfast. I
cameras
forgot
on
about
every
it.
side of that house. We know when Krista went in, and we never see her leave. This is not a
Guys, I
whodunit,
forgot about my
folks.
breakfast.
That house is surrounded by
That's
cameras.
how hard I've been working.
We know who came
I
and
had a
left.
fresh sausage biscuit sitting here, and I forgot all about it.
And we know
Bring in
that
the
her
Coke.
phone
I got
was found
forgot all
in a
about my
shoe,
biscuit.
hidden under a shelf, behind other shoes, wrapped in tinfoil, wrapped in a paper towel.
Man, what?
Dan leaves about 10 minutes later after talking with Chandler. And Kat arrives and spends the night. And they spend the night on this couch fort. You probably thought, why are they putting in evidence about that? Who cares where they slept? This is why it's important.
Fort.
A normal bed, a queen size, is about 5 feet wide. 2 people can sleep there really comfortably and for the most part not disturb one another unless you're a rather light sleeper. But Chandler has a problem. He has body parts in the basement of his home, in the freezer. What if Kat gets a hankering for some ice cream and goes in there like she had before?
It's not ice cream she's going to get a
He
hankering
needs to
for.
be able to control her that night. He needs to be able to know if she wakes up and where she goes if she does. So he builds this, a thing that has walls where you really can't get in and out of it gracefully. It's his way to know where she's at. I'm not sure if his girlfriend realizes how lucky she actually is.
I think that's going to
Saturday,
be in.
July 3rd, 2021.
I don't
Kat
know.
leaves at 6:55 a.m. She has a job.
Oh, yeah. Now she goes to
And
work.
we know
She doesn't
at
go to work for
7:47
the earlier
a.m.,
part.
Chandler is once again up and leaving the house, headed for Roxbury. How do we know that he's headed for Roxbury? His Snapchat shows him there. Kat kind of keeps track of Chandler's location and they snap each other all the time. She finds him there.
Man, you're just telling everybody what you're doing all the time, aren't you?
His phone also puts him there. And he's quite close to where the remains were found. We also know that is an area he frequented. That's a picture of him about a year before, standing there with a knife. And that white tent in the background, that's where they found Mom's legs. Dr. Rogalska performed the autopsy of the legs. And there's only certain things she can tell us from the limited amount of human body body remaining that she was able to do an autopsy of. She can say that Krista Halderson was dismembered post-mortem, so after death. She also, looking at a totality of the circumstances, puts the cause of death as homicidal violence. Ladies and gentlemen, I cannot tell you if Krista was shot, strangled, stabbed, or something else. I can't. What I can tell you is we have 5 bullets missing from a magazine, and we know that Bart Halderson was shot 2 or 3 times. So there are 2 missing bullets.
But you don't know how he died.
What I do know is she entered the house, and it was only Bart and Chandler there. No one else. She died of homicidal violence. Manner of death, homicide. And
Yeah.
those are legal documents.
Homicide just means someone else killed them.
The ME has to put these determinations on.
Homicide just means it wasn't suicide.
We know that Chandler
Man, I'll tell you
arrives
what,
back
my
home
neck
at
hurts so
9:31
freaking
a.m.
bad. I have no breakfast and my neck
Later
hurts.
that day, he goes to Dulce's house, and he returns at 3:07 p.m. And that night, though, we know he leaves his house at 10:08 p.m. And we know he goes up to Portage along the Wisconsin River. From his house to Portage and back. He's up in the Portage area from at least 10:37 p.m. to 11:03 p.m. Portage is along the Wisconsin River. We tried to search that area. Wisconsin River has a very strong current. People drown there every year. We never find their bodies, and their bodies are whole. They attempted a dive. It was unsafe. We didn't find any evidence there.
Okay, so if you want to
But I think in the totality of the circumstances,
dismember somebody and
that
escape
wasn't a
prosecution,
nighttime trip to go swim.
go to the Wisconsin River.
We know he returns at 11:30 p.m. And then we go on to July 4th. July 4th is actually the day that is the most eerie to me, because it's like Chandler Halderson pushed pause on his crime and just lived a normal life for a day.
Well, it was 4th of July.
On July 4th, he spends the day with his girlfriend and his girlfriend's family. He goes to the farm, uses the pool, eats dinner. They have some sort of barbecue.
Awesome.
And he asks
Yeah.
permission to return the next day and use the pool. On that day, he does do one thing concerning his crime. Oh, and then he goes to fireworks that night at Dan Croninger's house. He does send this text message that he says tells everyone is from his mom. And it is made from mom's phone that, again, is in the house, in shoes, hiding in the garage. Made it safely. Can't get anything through. And yes, it's packed. Going to White Lake today for the parade. We'll be home Monday night or Tuesday early.
Wow.
Love you lots. Mom ended a lot of her text messages to Chandler. Love you lots.
Wow.
Couple problems with the text message. First, the parade was on Saturday, not Sunday.
Oh, you dummy.
Second, the phone never leaves Windsor, Wisconsin. Monday, July 5th. We know that Kat had stayed over the night before, and she leaves at 7:47. We know that that day is supposedly Chandler's big doctor appointment at 2 p.m. We know that it's at a UW clinic on Park Street because there's conversation between Kat and Chandler about her potentially taking him, trying to get off of work. And, she actually Googles the directions. Here's his text messages to her. Made it a bit ago and checked in. This is at 2:09.
Job's not for till next year.
Just need you to know because I have horrible reception. 2:22.
I have to give up my wonderful live stream.
No connection to even load Snapchat. 2:24. And no Wi-Fi. 2:24. What UW clinic doesn't have Wi-Fi?
I don't know what UW clinic doesn't have Wi-Fi.
They took an X-ray and CT scan.
You tell me.
Nothing bad on the X-ray.
You live there.
CT scan, hun. They haven't determined anything, but with my legs, like they were, and I gotta wait to hear what they determined. Chandler never went to any doctor's appointment. He's at home, sending these text messages to his girlfriend, keeping up his ruse. Nowhere close to Madison, certainly not on Park Street. He does leave the house, though, that day. At 4:30 p.m., he goes to the farm. We know about that. He leaves a voicemail for Cress, and then him and Cress end up having an interaction. And there's this whole conversation about using the pool. We also hear from both Cress and Dulce that they went by the pool and there was no Chandler. So they take their little lawnmower. What did Dulce say? Granny's on a lawnmower. And they ride to where his car is. And the back is up, the trunk door, the hatch. And no Chandler. It's by the wood line. They see Chandler at some point kind of exit from the wood line. And indeed, his phone does have him there. And Cress is concerned enough. She thinks something's happening. I don't think she thought this, but she thought something was happening. So she asks the deputies to come take a look out in the woods there. So Brent Baverstock comes. He sees turkey vultures. He knows what he's about to find. He probably thinks he's going to find a whole body, but he knows what he's about to find. And there was Bart Halderson's torso. Dr. Breslauer did the autopsy of Bart's torso. She said he had at least 2 gunshot wounds, possibly 3. She couldn't tell because some of the deterioration of the muscle, whether or not it was like 1 wound tract or 2. So at least 2, but maybe 3. That he was shot in the back at least twice. That there was bullet material located in his body, and that 1 shot was a contact wound. The muzzle of the gun was touching his skin on the back. This wasn't a, oops, the gun went off. This is a, got you. You're dead. Cause of death, gunshot wounds. Manner of death, homicide. Can't shoot yourself in the back. So deputies begin to search this property. It's a vast property, maybe about 45 acres. A lot of it's prairie, a lot of it's woods. But they find this oil drum that has this weird cutout. And so they look in there and they find tools. And those tools then are tested by the Wisconsin State Crime Lab. The all-way handsaw has human blood identified as Bart and Krista. The broken saw blade has blood. It's Bart's. The scissors has blood, Bart and Krista's. And again, look at those numbers, 1,000 times the world's population.
Yeah, according to their scientists again.
Again, tested positive for human blood, Bart and Krista. And the head had Bart. Some of these tools were then sent to Dr. Figueroa Soto. And she did a detailed analysis, and she sat and she talked a lot about, well, things I don't really understand. But here's the basics of what I understood and what her reports say. Is that this all-way saw has a certain number of teeth per inch. This broken handsaw has a certain number of teeth per inch. She can look microscopically at the wounds and tell us what tools are consistent with the markings that she saw.
Thanks, Sully. I just saw your thing. Yeah, I've been sitting here watching the comments, man. It didn't have
is consistent with the broken hand.
Didn't have anything up here.
That's the tool that Chandler used to cut off his dad's head.
Yeah, isn't it broken though?
That handsaw or that blade has DNA parts.
This
Tools
guy
used to dismember Bart Halderson, the right humerus, consistent with that all-way super saw, right femur, consistent with the all-way super saw.
They're saying that he took him down to the basement
with the all-way super saw.
Pointed the rifle at Dad.
That's that
said,
saw.
Okay.
Again, has
How
Bart's
volume?
DNA and blood. Analyst McMahon from the Wisconsin State Crime Lab also
turned down
looked
my
at some of
microphone
these
by mistake.
items found on the Irwin Road farm.
Nobody's using
looked at
scissors to
that
take a
saw
body
blade.
apart.
And she compared it to the saw handle found in the garage of the Halderson home.
It's a bow saw.
And she did what she does. She took some measurements, puts things precisely.
Now I watched her part of the trial.
And found that they were a match. That those items fit. She put together two puzzle pieces. An item from Irwin Road matched an item in the garage.
Is this still? Is she still? I'm glad they got it off her.
She also took a look at the tarp in the garbage can.
Why is
And
the
there's a
garbage can
couple
out of
links
the
back
woods?
to the house with this garbage can. There's an extra lid to a garbage can up in that room that was, I think, at one time a bathroom and that they were remodeling. And there's also a matching sort of container in the garage.
What's in that bag?
Inside of that container found on the farm is a piece of yellow duct tape. That duct tape had blood. That was Bart Halderson's. On that tarp inside of that trash bin, there's more yellow tape. More yellow tape. And there's yellow duct tape found at the house.
Here's the thing.
So
everyone wants
analyst
to know
McMahon
is how
pieced these
this
together
kid. I mean,
microscopically to see if they were a match. And she looked at them.
it's bizarre.
And found that they were all one continuous piece of tape.
God, they are.
It's the tape he
Holy
wrapped
cow.
around the tarp to seal up his dad's torso.
Bye, Dad.
There was that torso also had Bart and Krista's DNA on it and tested positive for blood. Analyst Matson looked at some various items from the farm as well. She looked at that same tarp and found a fingerprint from Chandler.
Oh,
I
man.
remember that tarp we had Chandler buying at Fleet Farm. It would have been bought and packaged with no fingerprints on it. Here we find it covered in blood with his fingerprint.
He didn't even use gloves, y'all. He didn't have rubber gloves on.
She also looked at that tarp that was in that bin and looked at it for footwear impression analysis. Could she see some prints on it, and can we match those
He
up to
didn't
some
even wrap-
shoes? Maybe that'll
He
help
needs
us
to watch
figure out
Dexter.
who that is, who was on that tarp. She's able to match it up to Brooks 5 launch shoes. A pair of Brooks 5 launch shoes in a size 10.5 were found in the Halderson garage.
Well, you know, Brooks
Again,
launch
those are the same ones
shoes
that have blood on
are
them.
they gotta be primo shoes.
And that
This
Chandler's
guy,
wearing in that
he
video.
only does primo stuff in his life.
A second tarp was found in the barn. It is an older tarp. They tried to do footwear analysis on it, came back to a Ralph Polo shoe. We never found one of those. But again, that's an older tarp. We don't know if possibly it was before the homicides or after.
Well, why wouldn't you
Or
use
if there
that
was a
tarp?
pair of
though?
shoes that were ditched.
Were you afraid to use your dad's tarp
But
without
that
his
tarp,
permission?
Once again, is covered in blood that tests positive for both Bart and Krista. Now, you saw a picture of Bart working on that tarp. What you didn't see on that tarp was a bunch of blood stains because they weren't there. This blood is from this crime.
Oh, there's a lot of commotion going on.
Chandler gets home from the farm at 8:54 in the evening after going to the farm and later having dinner with Kat. But that night, he's not done. Early in the morning of the 6th, we see the fireplace burning more. Not as great as before.
So
but some
I'm
burning.
gonna
We also
take
see
a
that garage
snapshot
light
of that.
go on and
I'm
off,
gonna
on and
have
off.
it printed.
I think it's a total of
I'm gonna
7
frame that on my
times
wall.
to test
Thank
that,
you.
if will. And that's throughout the night.
Frame that and hang it on my wall.
And
Not
we
frame
know
it
at
on my wall.
4:30 that
Duh.
morning, Chandler leaves and goes into Madison. We know he goes into Madison from his phone records. We don't know what he did there, but we do know it was a trip that started out in the dark. We know he didn't have a job.
I'm the
And we
dumbest
know
person
Madison's
you know,
surrounded by
man.
lakes. Use your common sense.
I love you. I absolutely love you. We're gonna hook up one day, man. Go to
Wednesday,
Dreamland.
July 7th.
Oh, you gotta
You
get
know,
up here,
the
go
Subaru
to a
departs at
to see Alabama
9:36,
game.
And that Chandler goes to the farm. We know he goes to the farm from both his phone records, but also from this text exchange with Kat. Kat texts Chandler asking where he's going, and he replies, farm, but no one here, so leaving. We also know that out in the farm was found a Target bag that had been at Chandler's house. How do we know that? Because it has Kat's name on it from the pickup order of the stuff she brought over to Chandler's house, she testified about. That bag is full of bloody rags. We heard from Cress, those aren't from her house, and Catherine, that those aren't her rags. Chandler took a bag full of bloody rags, disposed of it at the farm, and a bag with Kat's name on it. And those tested positive for blood, but were not suitable for DNA testing. He comes back to his house after being at the farm, and he leaves and he goes and reports his parents missing at the police department. So he reports his parents missing. Later that evening, he has a couple visitors. There's close family friends, the Hilgendorfs, and there's two girls that are about the same age as the Halderson brothers, and they go over to try to comfort Chandler, because that's what Krista would want them to do, one of them testified. So that's what they were gonna do. They go over there, and through a series of events, Chandler starts giving them legal advice about police cooperation. You know, you don't have to turn your phone over to police. They don't have to image it. You can just take screenshots and text it to them. Your parents are allegedly missing. You just reported them to the police as missing, and you're encouraging people not to be fully cooperative with police? He then later has pizza that night with Mary Sesto and tells Mary Sesto, she starts saying, well, can't they just ping your parents' phones? Wouldn't that work? And he said, no, they can't ping a cell phone. She, disagrees with him. Yeah, you can. He looked her in the eye, she testified, and coldly said, no, they can't. She was nervous enough of Chandler at that point that she testified that she put herself between the exit door and Chandler. At that point, she knew something had happened. She just didn't have the evidence to back it up yet, just her gut feeling. On July 8th, Chandler goes around the neighborhood and questions neighbors concerning video footage. In all fairness, his uncle did recommend that he do this, but his uncle also said it's to preserve that evidence. If you watch those videos and listen to that audio, when people and his neighbors say, yeah, I turned it over to the police yesterday, he doesn't say, okay, thank you. He starts asking him questions. Does your camera pick up the road? Does it pick up my house? Does it pick up my driveway? He's not trying to help the investigation. He's trying to figure out, are the police on to me yet?
Well, I mean, wouldn't you?
He gives media interviews to 3 different stations. And as more and more squad cars arrive, he starts calling the police, asking, hey, what's up? Also that day, on July 8th, he does some Google searches. The timing of these searches is incredibly important, folks. Those searches happened at 9:44 and 9:45 a.m. Torso is not found until 3 p.m. Krista's legs are not found until a week later.
That's weird.
And what is he Googling? Body found, Wisconsin. Women's body found, Wisconsin. Wisconsin dismembered body found.
Oh, wow.
Dead body found, Wisconsin. I think it's interesting what he wasn't Googling.
If you had the money to go out and buy a second
Jane Doe,
iPad,
John Doe
you
in
had
hospital
2,
in Wisconsin.
would you do it and set it up with an entirely fake
Car
account?
crashes in northern Wisconsin. Crimes in White Lake, Wisconsin. Drownings on Sawyer Lake, where their cabin is. Or organizations that maybe can help start a manhunt. I think it's also worth noting he had 2 vehicles available, never even went looking for his parents. There's a reason. He knew where they were. He put them there. It's also worth noting that The analyst yesterday, Courtney Ripp, testified that she didn't have any Google searches before July 8th to even look at. So that either means that Chandler never Googled anything for the entire time period of those search warrants, or he cleared his history every day. On this day, he was arrested. He didn't have a chance to clear his history. So he's taken down to the station where he gives about an hour and a half, 2-hour interview.
You clear your history
where he
after
gives
you close all the
same
the
line,
browsers.
this mystery
He'd
couple
use Tor browser.
of,
Even my Tor browser, I
taking
can't get
lots
to
of
work.
alcohol to the cabin, taking a large amount of cash, because, accountants love to keep large amounts of cash around. And at some
Do
point,
they or don't
Detective
they?
Hendrickson is like, we know you're lying. We know your parents are no longer here. Why don't you tell us the truth? And at that point, Chandler's arrested. So that's the evidence, folks. That's the pieces of the puzzle in this case. It's not a whodunit. Cameras all around.
If I was on
You
the
know
jury,
that
I'd go
Bart
and
and
go,
Krista
well,
went
she
into
had
that
the
home
puzzle
and never came
pieces,
out, at least as whole people.
So
That their bodies were found dismembered, discarded, and hidden throughout.
It's so
southern
weird. It's like,
Wisconsin.
I think the guy
That's what
did
the
it.
evidence shows. We have
But I'm always looking,
experts from
is
DNA,
the evidence showing
fracture
it?
matching, trace, footwear.
Yeah, there's a lot of. Here's the thing.
Fire inspector. We have bones in the
Did
ashtray.
he kill his parents or did he try to dispose of them?
Chandler Halderson
I don't
killed
know.
his parents.
There's no proof that he killed his
But I
parents.
think it's very important to point out
Right.
that Bart and Krista Halderson are not a puzzle. So it's a good metaphor. It's a helpful metaphor, perhaps, to look at evidence.
Did
But they
he
are two people that were
kill
very
his
much
parents
alive
or did he
on
mutilate their
June
body?
30th of 2021. They are two people that deserve to be treated with dignity and respect.
His girlfriend could have
They
killed
were
him.
somebody's spouse, somebody's parents, somebody's brother, somebody's sister. They were loved by their neighbors. They had close friends. They had jobs. They were normal folks just trying to live a normal life.
These people, I would have to go back and look at the.
They don't
I
even get
had
to be
this
buried
here,
next to
didn't
each
I?
other. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I'm asking that you give justice to Krista and Bart Halderson, and that you treat them with the dignity and respect that their own son has never given them. Thank you.
All right, we're gonna take a break. I'm gonna get my breakfast that I didn't eat. I want to heat it up. We'll see. Sometimes they give a break between these.
Does anybody need a break?
Yeah, there you go.
Or can we
See.
go forward?
Actually, Judge, I'm going to ask for a 10-minute break.
Okay.
All right. I knew there was gonna be a
could use
break.
moment too. Ladies and gentlemen, we will break mid-morning break actually, and we'll come back for the defense closing.
All right, the defense
and
closing is
further
gonna be great because
instructions
then
and
you get to
perhaps
hear
rebuttal arguments. So
them dismantle. If they're good, dismantle what the prosecution just said. What I would do is, I'm going to mute that screen audio. There you go. All right. So what I would do is I would sit there and I'd say, you didn't prove that he killed him. All your proof is that, you're leading towards he dismembered the bodies and stuff. I don't know what he's been charged with off the top of my head. But I mean, the main thing always, there's no worse sentence in our country than first degree murder. Your premeditated murder, because it's the only thing that has the death penalty. So you got to be thinking if you're his defense attorney, that's the first thing you're trying to get thrown out always. And I'd say you haven't proven anything. Yeah, okay, so he wasn't in school and stuff. He talked to his dad about. What does that mean? What's their relationship like? I mean, who knows? Maybe he just has a come to Jesus with his dad. He goes, I'm a complete failure. I'm scared. I don't know what to do. Help me. Guess what? Dad's probably going to help out, right? So, the thing about the gun and stuff. I mean, yeah. That's bad. He also could If the guy's dismembering his parents, the guy's sick, right? So he could have shot him to see what a bullet wound does to a torso. In the meantime, as far as we know, the one-armed man came in and killed his parents. Now, I'm not saying this happened. I'm just saying, though, in law, you have to be beyond a reasonable doubt. And back in my mind, I keep going back to think about his girlfriend when she was on the stand, the way she acted and stuff. And they brought up her stuff today. Was she there? Did she pull the trigger? Or did he pull the trigger? Because if she pulled the trigger, I don't know, do you still convict him? Right? All right, we're going to take that break. I shall return. I'm going to put I'm going to mute my mic, turn their mic on, so when they come back, if I'm not here, you'll hear them. In the meantime, I have my breakfast I totally forgot about, cold, so I go through the science of who invented the microwave? Mr. Micro? You haven't been in micro machines? I'm going to go have a sausage biscuit. Guys, I shall return. Thank you for being here. Love y'all. Peace.
a theory, a motive, and to essentially taint your view on Chandler. So when we were going over jury selection, I asked you, how would you feel if you didn't testify? And a couple people said I would need to hear from him. A couple people said that they would treat him the same way they would do every witness. Bullshit. He lies, and they did a great job of making it known that he lies. If he testified, you were not going to believe anything he said. I also said that it was a game day decision, and most of the times it is a game day decision. This never was. If you heard from him, were you even going to believe him? You weren't, and that's fine, because it doesn't matter. Because at the end of the day, there's only one lie that really does matter, and that's the one that he said about his parents missing.
Prosecution's
I'm going to make your life a little easier.
punch.
It's going to be a little unconventional.
A 1-2 punch.
There are certain charges that I believe the state has met their burden, and they have proved it beyond a reasonable doubt. And again, from the beginning, first-degree intentional homicide is a serious charge.
Okay, yeah, this is the defense.
We've been here for the homicides. A piece of paper that is signed, a formal piece of paper that's signed by Chandler to the Dane County Sheriff's Office about a missing persons, that clearly is not true. This is proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And I want you to think about that when it comes to talking about these homicides.
Wait, Mrs., is this defense or is this
I also want you to think about another thing.
Think about my Starbucks.
I apologize. But I want you to think about another thing. When Attorney Raymond did her closing, two phrases, if you will, really caught on. Several times she said, "We know X, Y, and Z happened. We know that this happened." Pay attention to the times where she said, "We don't know." We don't know. I can't tell you how she was killed. We don't know. Whatever. And it was always in the parts that had to do with the homicides.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
When I was in law school, I was told that the words "I don't know" should never come from that table. Because you should know.
They didn't teach me
If
that
you're
in law
charging
school.
people with crimes, you should know.
They told me it was okay to say you don't know. Better than making up something. If you make up something,
Now I'm going to
it's
walk
contempt.
you through the evidence that I think that they skipped over that matters for me in proving that first-degree intentional homicide was not something that they met their burden on. I first want to talk about the cabin. There is a cabin. There's no disputing that. Bart and Krista went to the cabin at least 2 or 3 times a year, I think is what someone testified to. It's possible that they could have gone to the cabin that weekend. In fact, you don't even know what their weekend plans were. Friends testified. None of them said, "Oh, they were going to come over to watch fireworks with us." So no one knew what their plans were that weekend. The reason they're making a big deal about it is because that is some kind of premeditation to them. That is some kind of intent. Ooh, he was going to do something that day. He knew he was going to do something that day, so he was going to say something about going to the cabin. He's talking to his girlfriend.
Okay, she needs to expand on what she's saying. I understand what she's trying to get to, but
there's a text message exchange between Kat and Chandler, where Kat asks, "We're not going to the cabin, right?" And he says no. You're allowed to use your common sense. When you have conversations with significant others and you're texting, you're not going to get the full story because sometimes you do it in person. What we know from him and his girlfriend is that they chatted on Snapchat. They chatted everywhere they could.
Yeah, they're doing things on video
What you do
feeds
know
everywhere
is
they
that
could.
At some point, talks about going to this cabin as a family were happening. So this notion that the idea of going to the cabin was last minute because he needed to cover up these homicides that he was going to do is not true. Now, again with the lies, certain lies mattered, certain lies did not. What I want to clear up, and Attorney Raymond did a great job when she mentioned that we've seen this case multiple times. We've dealt
I'm gonna
with
tell you
this
that's gonna be
case,
my new
we've talked
slogan.
to each other about this case, so sometimes we get things wrong. I'm going to clear up something that they got wrong. The evidence does not show that Bart and Krista knew about this SpaceX job. You heard from Kat's mother, Dulce, that she knew about it. You heard about Cress knew about it. Kat talked about it. Maybe another friend or roommate talked about it, but you never heard anyone testify that Bart and Krista knew about this SpaceX job. You heard from Bart's brother, Brett. I do not believe he mentioned it at all. So that's not a lie on this house of cards that was crashing down that Bart and Krista knew about. You also didn't hear that they knew about the scuba team, dive team, whatever you want to call it, lie with the City of Madison Police Department. You heard it from his girlfriends, ex's girlfriends and Kat. You heard it from his friends, but you didn't hear it from people that knew Bart and Krista and said that they mentioned it. And even then, all of these lies, what does it matter? So I want to talk about the two lies that the state really
See,
honed
all
in.
lies matter.
Boy, did they
She
do
said,
a
"Doesn't
great
matter,
job
all lies
talking
matter."
about these lies and making it seem like it really was a big deal. Let's talk about MATC. First of all, yesterday, I think we heard from an official person from MATC that said no record that he attended school during this time. Detective Shunk showed us transcripts. You saw all his grades. He did attend at some point. That was really all you needed. You did not need to have the email conversations. You did not need to have the text conversations. You didn't need any of that, but they provided it to you, even though it's not an element or a charge that they have to prove. During their opening and throughout the case, they made a big deal about this email. It was an email between Bart and Krista. First of all, the email happened October 10th, 2020. The jig was up a long time ago. It didn't all of a sudden crash and burn on the 1st of July, 2021. And Bart knew. He was onto it. He says he sounds just like Chaz on the phone. Use your common sense. These email exchanges are from people with a .gmail.com address. Official school people using a .gmail.com address. Both Bart and Krista are college educated. You want to tell me that they honestly thought that this was legit?
That's
Or
good
maybe
defense
they knew
language
that their
right there.
child was lying, and they were just going to carry on the lie.
Sometimes you do it.
Same with AmFam. And I use AmFam colloquially, but American Family Insurance. Again, there was a person that testified yesterday that Chandler never worked there, but he still had emails, he still had text messages, he still had this and that confirming that he lied, even though one person could have done that. And again, it's not an element that they needed to prove. It's not a charge that they needed to prove. They just wanted you to know that he's a liar. And what does it matter? Here's what you need to ask yourself. What does it matter? Because according to them, that's motive. That's the reason why he did what he did.
Yeah, there you go.
House of cards built
I was saying that
of lies was
earlier.
crashing down, and he had nothing.
Could just
he
talk
couldn't
to
do
his
anything.
dad.
He had to murder these people. Why? Why? You don't know why. You were never told that they were going to kick him out of the house. You were never told that they were going to disown him. You were never told anything about why it matters. If this is going to be motive, if this is the reason you're intentionally killing someone, it better matter. There better be consequences.
Yep.
Kids lie to their parents all the time.
Shocking.
And you just don't know how this was going to affect Chandler. He's complaining to his girlfriend the morning of about everything being fucked up and crashing down. You do that. That's what significant others are for.
Yeah.
You honestly think
How
that
she
he's
handles
complaining
it
about
is
things
how
crashing
she
down,
will be
and
as
his mind is
a
going straight
spouse
to, well, now I'm just going to murder them.
and as a mother,
There was another motive
as a friend.
that was mentioned very briefly, but it was mentioned, so I'll talk about it. When Mitchell testified, the very last question was about a life insurance policy. And I believe he said that the payout may have been about $1 million. And he acted confused. He didn't really know about it. It could very well be that the only reason he knows that number, that value, is because of things that are happening now. I don't
Maybe the
doubt
brother did it.
that kids know about parents having life insurance policies. I don't doubt that. But ask yourself this, does everyone know how much the policy is worth?
I just found out my wife has a
Probably
life
not.
insurance policy for me.
Do you think
I'd be
you're going to get $1
concerned.
million from your parents? Probably not. And there was no evidence that was provided to show that Chandler knew that there was a policy in place and he knew the value, knew enough of that value
Yeah,
to
there's
do something
stipulations
very
with life
drastic
insurance.
to get that money. There was no evidence that he needed money. Yes, he didn't have a job, but nothing came out that he needed money.
Oh, thank you.
And I'm spending time
Thank you
talking
so
about
much.
motive because, as the judge said, they don't need to prove a motive. Motive does not mean intent, and I need you to understand that. Motive does not mean intent. The other important part that I want to focus on is this timeline. If you go back to the opening, the state said that from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. on the 1st, the killings occurred. Again, it's not evidence, but it is a roadmap, and it is important because that's how they're going to tailor their case throughout. Well, first of all, Krista didn't get home until after 5 o'clock, roughly around 5:12. They made a big deal about this MATC meeting. MATC with Chaz, MATC. You don't know if that was in person. You don't know what it's about other than MATC. You don't know if it was just a conversation that they were going to have. You don't know if it's a follow-up. You don't know anything about it other than some kind of MATC chat was going to happen between Bart and Chandler. And that was going to happen at 3 o'clock. I don't know about you, but my meetings never run on time.
My life doesn't run on time. I realize that I am
the other
by instinct a defense guy.
Timeline is what we heard yesterday from Bart's employer. We asked him about that spreadsheet that has these logins. I remember the logins were in Eastern time. So what we were able to get out is that roughly from about 4:13, there was a login. What do we know about that login? We know that it's required, a password is required.
Ooh.
We also know that, like a lot of dads, people keep their passwords in a place where they can remember them. We also know that the logins, that there was a certain amount of logins that you were able to do before you were booted out.
Yeah, I get booted out
We
all the
also
time.
know
I
that
can
that
get into my
person
email now.
tried these passwords, couldn't get in. So there's some leaps that you have to make in order for this theory or this timeline to make sense. The first leap you have to make is that Chandler knew that password.
Do y'all ever see the show Quantum Leap?
There's no evidence that he knew that.
That was a good
The second
show.
theory that you have to make is that while he's allegedly murdering his parents, he had the wherewithal to go to this computer and put on YouTube or something to keep it going, when there's no evidence that that even happened. There was a lot of evidence about cell phone data that were extracted, computer
She's
data,
pretty
all
good.
of that, but nothing about Bart's laptop showing that there was YouTube or anything to keep that computer active, because it had to be active. It would shut down or it would log off after 20 minutes of inactivity.
I hate that.
The other
I hate
piece
when that
of
stuff
evidence
shuts down.
with this timeline is that you had that neighbor that during their closing, the state said that the neighbor smelled something around 8 to 9 p.m. No, they testified that it was around 7 o'clock that they started smelling something.
Oh.
What we do know.
Oh, why didn't you
Is
object?
that roughly around 8, around 8:30-ish, maybe a little earlier, look at your notes, Chandler went to Quick Trip to buy some ice. So again, another leap that you're supposed to make is that while he's allegedly murdering his parents, he decides, I'm going to start this fire. I'm going to put some
We
things in that
didn't
fire.
start
But
the
wait, I have to go
fire.
to Quick Trip. Use your common sense. That makes sense to absolutely no one.
They keep saying common sense. I don't think common sense.
They don't
Quantum
get
Leap
the
was
benefit of the
awesome,
doubt that I get.
Rebecca.
So they can't
Surprised
say,
they haven't
well, we
redone
might
that
have been
show.
wrong about the timeline.
It's got to be on something.
They don't get that. What you have is a medical examiner, 2 medical examiners that could not say the time of death. So really, truly, do you know what
We didn't start
time
the fire.
these alleged homicides happened?
Well, they let him
You don't.
style his hair up
You know
from a
that
jail cell,
happened
don't
that
they?
day based on other circumstantial evidence that you can put together, but you don't know the exact time. Let's talk about what else you do not know. You do not know what gun was used.
That
They want
is
to make a
something I
big deal
didn't think
about this
about.
gun. Let's talk about it. You heard from the medical examiner that there was at least 2 to 3 shots of a gun, period. That medical examiner was not able to tell you what kind of gun, wasn't even able to tell you if it was a high-powered rifle, just a gun. She also wasn't able to tell you which
Oh my gosh, Rebecca.
wound occurred
5
first.
days ago, this popped
So
up.
this contact wound, that could have been the last one.
There's going to be
That
a
could have
new
been the first
Quantum
one. We
Leap
don't know.
series.
This gun
Can you believe
was
that? I
not
have no
even
idea.
located until December.
Just now learned this.
Excuse me, October. These homicides occurred in July. Chandler apparently hid everything. He hid it so well that they didn't find it until October when the owner of that farm was cleaning out. If anything, Dane County deputies did a thorough investigation. They spent at least 3 hours in that barn. You want to tell me they couldn't find a gun, but they were able to find a tarp? What you know from the gun is that there's a bullet casing and a bullet fragment in this basement that match to this gun. You do not know when that casing was there. You don't even know if that bullet fragment and that casing happened at the same time. You don't know that this is the gun that was used on Bart. You don't know that. So whenever you don't know about something, you have to ask yourself, have they met their burden? Is this proof beyond a reasonable doubt? Because you do have examples of what proof beyond a reasonable doubt is. Those maps that we saw yesterday, tracking Chandler's every single move, matching up with where the bodies were found and at the time that they were found, that's proof beyond a reasonable doubt. A bloody tarp and some tools, that's proof beyond a reasonable doubt. But that doesn't mean that a homicide occurred. It means that something awful happened. And no one's disputing that. No one is saying that nothing happened to Bart and Krista. something awful happened to these two people. And the very least you can say is that Chandler reacted. But you do not know what happened. And I know some of you have already made up your mind. I see it, and that's fine. Maybe you do think he murdered his parents. The question I have for you is, did the state meet their burden when it comes to first-degree intentional homicide? There are a lot of different homicides.
Oh my gosh, they're bringing Justified back too.
They chose first-degree intentional homicide because they believed that they could prove that. I'm asking you that
It's breaking
question.
news. Rebecca, this is so
What have you
exciting.
been given that proves intent? Some searches after the fact? During closing, they said that the last time that there was any kind of search happened on the 8th. And they believed that he was just deleting his searches every day and he wasn't able to delete his searches on the 8th because he was arrested. There are searches on the 7th. And hey, guess what? There are times when I do not Google something. There are times when you all don't Google something. So he was smart enough to delete his Google history, but he's not smart enough to delete anything else. He's smart enough to do a very good job about cleaning and concealing.
I like what
these
she's saying here
homicides.
because they always
But
do
man,
that.
was he
The
just really
prosecution,
bad when it came to everything else.
people are only smart enough to do what the prosecution has
You
laid out as
cannot
evidence,
have
but everything else
both
you're supposed to
ways.
conveniently ignore.
You can't have someone that is so cold and calculated to clean everything up and then say to themselves, I'm going to leave one casing. You just can't have that with everything else that happened after these homicides.
Yeah, she's
It's,
right.
it's kind of
I agree.
laughable when you
I
think
concur.
about it. And you just don't have that with these homicides. Why? Why don't you have that? There was no evidence, there was no testimony at any point saying that Chandler had planned this out, and they would have brought it to you if they had it. There's no evidence at all that Chandler is a violent person. And I'm not saying that you need to be a violent person to commit homicides. I don't, you know that. But again, intent is something that means something. And there's just no evidence that's providing you with that level of proof beyond a reasonable doubt.
Nobody's going to
vote
vote
in
in.
intentional homicide.
Problem is her notes.
Do you know how Bart was killed? Exactly how he was killed.
That's key.
Do you know how Krista was killed?
No, you don't. So that's what I was saying earlier. Is
Do you know if it was an awful accident? Do you know if it
the
was
guy could have been
intentional?
crazy and just trying to dispose of the body, thinking,
Do
"Hey,
you
I'm
know
doing
if
something
there was
good here
someone
for
else
society.
involved?
I'm getting rid of my parents by putting them in the
You
fireplace."
And that's a problem.
Question is, do you think he tasted them? Do you think he cooked up a little of them? That's a rumor going around.
Now, for better or for worse, this case has gotten a lot of media attention. And unfortunately, I have to bring it up.
Uh-oh.
You were asked every day whether or not you saw something on the news, whether you heard something on the news. And you were asked that for a reason. You guys have a really bad job coming up. It's difficult. I do not want your job. You have to go back and look at everything and make sure that everything that you're discussing in that room actually came from evidence that you heard from that stand and not from the Google searches that you may or may not have done.
Google
I'm hoping
searches.
you didn't, but I'm going to be realistic.
Yeah, you're not supposed to. Oh, wow.
Or the comment section on YouTube.
Wow, she put it out there.
And
Yeah,
you're going
I
to
think
have
I
to
heard
hold that person
someone
accountable.
wondered
And you're going to have to
Oliphant.
hold that
Yeah,
person
Oliphant's
accountable
gonna be the
because
dude.
That's your duty.
That's I just saw that. He is an awesome,
You have
awesome
another
actor.
very serious
You know, he's
duty
from
that's going to be hard for
Hawaii.
each and every one of you
Isn't
to
that
do.
funny?
You're going to have to take your emotions out of the equation. There was another promise that was said during the state's opening. They promised you that they were not going to try to
Oh, I
tug
didn't
at
hear
your
that.
heartstrings
Is this something she said or
and
I
show
said?
you pictures.
It was something I said. Well,
That
I'm
they didn't
sorry.
need to
Just
show
you're gonna
you.
have to expect that.
When Mitchell testified, do you think he needed a giant blow-up picture of his parents next to him to be reminded what his parents looked like? When Brett testified, do you think it was important for their case to ask him the last conversation he had with his brother? Oh, and it happened to be on his birthday?
Oh,
The birthday being July 1st?
this is really good. This is really good.
No, they didn't do that because they needed it for the case. They did it because they
To
want you to
manipulate
think
you.
of your emotions. They want you to feel things because when you feel things, it's
that's
going to be
awesome,
harder
Dana.
for you to separate feelings
blew my mind.
from facts. And you're going to have to do that because you may feel bad. No one here feels great about what happened. And after you make your decision, no one's going to walk out of this courtroom feeling at ease, at peace, happy. But you're going to have to do that. And people are not going to like it, regardless of what the decision is. You're going to have to hold people accountable for it.
The prosecutor and the defense sharing a blazer. Yeah, that's what got me. I absolutely.
Now, I don't get to come back up.
No.
When I'm done, the state's going to come up and they're going to do their rebuttal. And they're going to say everything that I said is flawed some way, somehow, or that you shouldn't pay attention
She
to.
just
And that's
quoted
fine.
my
That's
cousin
their job.
Vinny.
They have the burden, they have the last say.
Look at
But when
everything,
they're
everything that
talking
person says is bullshit.
during their rebuttal, I want you to think of this. What if I told you that at any minute, someone's going to walk into that door, someone from the Dane County Deputy's Department is going to walk in and say, I found it. I found the video we were looking for.
they
I know
did-
exactly what happened in that house on the 1st.
They did that with Nick Rakita. Not
It doesn't
Rakita.
exist.
I mean, jeez.
But what if it did?
Kyle Rittenhouse. Golly,
Are you going
I'm
to be
losing
paying
it.
attention to, I'm going to assume it's Mr. Brown, or are you going to be paying attention to what Mr. Brown has to say during his rebuttal? Or are you going to be looking at that door hoping that someone walks in? And if you're going to look at that door hoping that someone comes in, you have reasons to doubt.
Oh man, she's good, y'all. She's good. Think about that. She's just laying out saying
There are plenty of reasons to doubt that a first-degree intentional homicide occurred.
that's
There
how
are
you would talk
plenty
to your
reasons
friends.
to
You know
doubt.
that, right? It's like, really, you think that's going to happen? Someone's just going to come in
It may
here and
not
tell you
like
this?
that. It may
You
feel
think
like
that?
a cop-out. It may feel like I'm just
That's all. You're too sure.
doing something for the sake of coming up here and talking to you. I'm not. I'm doing my job. I'm making sure that they do their job. And I'm asking you to do your very difficult job of evaluating everything. And from day one, the issue has been the homicides.
Yeah.
I want you to spend time on the homicides. Ask yourself the questions that you need to ask. I guarantee you that the 12 of you that are going to go back and deliberate are all going to have 12 different
I have a friend of
theories
mine
on what happened.
who's
And
an
that's the
attorney,
problem.
and he uses the line, I don't know if they did it.
I'm
Maybe it was the
asking you to
one-armed
find him
man.
not guilty of first-degree
He
intentional
said
homicide.
so many people get confused by that.
Thank you.
All right, let's see. I'm going to put this on mute real quick.
Thank you, Attorney Vera.
They're going to read the jury instructions real quick. We'll let them do that. But anyway, oh, wait, hang on. Oh, wait,
For
yeah.
rebuttal, in other words, the last
I forgot about
word.
the rebuttal.
And I believe Attorney Brown will provide that to you at this time.
Forgot about the rebuttal. This is an opportunity to get the other chick to talk. That was a good defense closing argument. I was kind of like, but then she wrapped it up really well. I wish she had more passion.
Thank you.
And I'm not saying this guy's innocent. I like what she said. She's trying to make the prosecution do her job, do their
A lot of
job.
talk
Oh,
in
here we
the
go.
Defense closing and opening about things they learned in law school or going to law school. And I think in the opening, I heard at one point, being on a jury is different than being a person. I don't know if any of that's true, but I'm done with law school and I do this for a living.
Oh,
I operate in a world of common sense and not
yeah, she said
fanciful
common sense
thoughts
too.
of just this guy finding his dead parents and deciding no big deal. Let's just cut them apart and hide them around the state. But who knows how they died? I live in that world.
She
That's
should have
objected.
objected.
Because being a juror is no
immediately.
different than being a
Which
person.
people
unlike
don't object
you
to
were told
closings.
You're told by the judge, although they figured out a way to say it in about 2 paragraphs, you use your common sense and experience in the roles of everyday life or something along those lines. A bunch of lawyers got together and thought about it for 2 weeks and figured out a way to say, use your common sense. Miss Vera just stood up here and said, what if this was
Common
an
sense is
awful
a theory.
accident? Bart Halderson was shot in the back twice. You do not fall down and shoot yourself in the back twice.
Well, you also said the bullet ricocheted.
Bart Halderson and Krista Halderson had their heads chopped off, had their arms and legs removed.
How did
that
she
was an
die?
awful accident. Think of for a second. You heard about the bones. You saw those marks on the bones, those attempts. Some of them 3, some of them 10, some of them 5. False starts is what the anthropologists call them. That is someone on their hands and knees. Chandler, apparently, which was just the same. I guess we're admitting to that now. They lied and chopped him up and hit him around the state. On his hands and knees, some of them from the front to back, meaning probably could see the face of his mom and his dad as that saw moved back and forth, back and forth. And you just saw the bones.
Are we
what's
sure
before
he
the
saw
bones?
them
The
up?
skin, the blood, the muscle, the fat, the smell that they had to produce, the blood.
Gross.
Of his own parents.
Dude.
An awful accident. We heard, I go days without Googling things. I don't. Maybe you do.
I don't use Google.
You don't Google dismembered body found Wisconsin when you're crying on the local news about your missing parents. I bet you don't Google woman's dismembered body found. I bet you don't do legal research about some other guy who chopped up his family members and threw them in a river.
Yeah, actually, I do. I've
But
done
you
all
don't do
those
that.
things. But I also went to law school, and now I cover this stuff on YouTube.
Ms. Vera talked a lot about the lies. Chandler is a liar, and it seems like we all agree on that now. Lots of people lie. I can agree with Ms. Vera on that. The question in this case isn't who would do this? And maybe that's something that's gone through your mind here. Who would do this? Who would go through all this? Who would make up all these lies? Who would take it this far? All these fake people, the burner phone, the nonsense, the calls to his dad, the emails back and forth, the friends and family, the move to Florida. Who would do this? And you're going to leave this room. 6 of you are going to go home. 12 of you are going to go into a room and talk to each other. And you're never going to have an answer to that question. Because who would do this in the common sense meaning of it? Nobody does something like this. But that's not the role of a jury. You're answering a different question, which is who did this, not who would do this. Because for the life of you, I bet before you got that notice in the mail a couple months ago saying you had to come here, you would say nobody. You would have said nobody. Nobody would shoot their dad in the back twice, kill their mom, lay them on the ground in front of their family fireplace, take scissors and pruning shears, take a hacksaw, take a keyhole saw, and saw off their heads, arms, legs, burn them in the fireplace. Over 100 fragments of human bone found in that fireplace. You'd say no one would do this.
Fragments. No, I didn't
You got
catch
your
that
jury
part.
summons, and you ended up here, and you found out that someone did do it.
Is fragmentation, is that part of cremation?
So those lies are important.
Or is that something like what happened if you like
Because
say
you at some level have to grasp
bashed up
how this man
bones.
got to that point. As I said in the opening statement,
You still don't know
the
he
murders
did
were
it.
just a small piece of the puzzle. None of the things that happened before, none of the things that happened after make any sense. Got to have the murders to understand why he did that bizarre story for 7 days of his parents going missing with the unknown couple. And you can understand the murders if you understand what happened before.
I think he killed his parents.
With his bizarre actions of building.
I don't
up
think
this
the
life.
state, though, has him
It
pulling the
wasn't real.
trigger. They don't have
Why
him
were
doing the
those lies
sawing.
important? They were important because that's all
They're
they
just
had.
saying, well, it was in his basement.
We're here because of the deaths of Bart and Krista Halderson.
Well, so is his girlfriend.
And they are
So
dead.
is his brother.
There's no doubt about that. You have most decidedly concluded that at this point. You've seen their bodies. But on some level, whoever Chandler Halderson was died years ago as well. And what was left was this shell of a person who made this nonsense up.
What are you
Who built
doing?
himself up to be a tech employee, rescue
What did he
scuba
ever do
diving
that
guy,
something
was going
died?
to
When did that part of his
college.
life get
It was
brought up in
all he
court?
had.
That he could be crossed.
It was all he had.
This is complete nonsense.
And that started to
I mean, it really does upset me.
Maybe his parents suspected it. But you listened to Bart Halderson on that call just about a day before he was killed. That sound like someone to you who knew his son had been lying to him? Those text messages. I spoke to Omar Job. I'm ready whenever you are. He didn't know what was going on until that moment. So when Bart Halderson finds out that this is a lie, to Chandler, whoever Chandler Halderson is, the whole world crumbles. Because if you weren't going to school, they sure weren't going to hire you at American Family Insurance. That couldn't have been real. There's no way you got a job at SpaceX. What else are you lying about? Where are you going all the time when you say you're training for this scuba diving team? Everything about him falls apart. He doesn't have any money. Remember when he texted his girlfriend, he was going to the police, hey, can I have $5 for a sandwich? He can't just leave. He can't move out. He can't get in a car and head west. He probably couldn't make it out of the state with the amount of money he had because he never had a job. He had two options. Own up to his lies, stand up and finally tell the truth for once. Or like a coward, shoot your father in the back. And that's exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened. Miss Vera says, wow, we just got a shell casing. Yeah, we got a bullet fragment. Just happens to have Bart Halderson's DNA on it. When you looked at it, just happens to appear to have blood all over it. And then text my mom. Hey, pick up soda for me. Dad's phone's dead. She gets home. Whose blood spatters on the safe right there by the bullet fragment? Those little red dots, human blood. It's Krista Halderson. We don't know what happened. We know exactly what happened.
Oh, we're both dead. We're both dead.
Murders are not captured on video. That's not how this happens. That's how this
Provided by
works.
Jack. Jack, thank you.
Sure, in the grand scheme of things, there are some people who are stupid enough to walk up to a gas station, stand in front of the security.
killing
camera and
me?
shoot somebody. But that's not real life. That's not common sense. Chandler Halderson did this in the basement of his house. The blood is everywhere.
Oh.
The bullets there.
I just realized I had this
You heard
mic
from
on,
Mr.
and I
Halderson, who
picked up.
testified. He only found one, and the one he found was kind of rolled behind under that bench.
Oh, I picked up my game.
He tried to clean
I'm
it.
sorry.
Peroxide everywhere. He's having people bring him peroxide. Blood all over that fireplace stoop. Bone fragments in the ash trap. You know exactly what happened. You
Yeah, we
don't
know that
need-
he could have put it, the whole body
The
of fire
lies
in there.
are
or something.
important
He'd be mutilating a body.
because it's all Chandler Halderson had. And when they were exposed, he started coming up with this plan. And yeah, after the Omar Job text comes in on the 29th, he's having a conversation with his girlfriend. You heard Miss Vera actually read it, and that's fair. The day before, hey, are we going to the cabin? What's going on? They're talking about the cabin. He's starting to dabble with the idea of what he's doing. But then I think it was at 1:04 p.m.
It doesn't mean anything.
About an hour and a half, 2 hours before he did it. He says they're going to the cabin this weekend. He made his final decision. Because at that moment, Chandler Halderson knew there was no way out. He couldn't get in the car and drive away. He couldn't make up another lie. He couldn't make up another email. He couldn't buy another burner phone. It was done.
Do you have a burner phone?
Everyone was going to see him for what he was. Just some liar. Some guy without a job, not going to school, who'd been lying to everyone for years. And he couldn't handle that.
Why couldn't he handle
So
it?
he committed the ultimate act of betrayal against your parents. Perhaps against any human being, but especially your parents, the person who held you when you were a baby and cleaned up your cuts on your knee when you were learning to ride a bike, comforted you when you were crying. The ultimate act of betrayal. He shot his parents. And then he cut them up and he hid them. But the lies didn't even stop there. It was a new lie. No, that's the cabin. Now he's on the news. Now he's giving interviews. Given 2-3 more days, don't think for a second there wouldn't have been 2-3 more fake emails. Text messages from my mom. A whole new world. A whole new reality for Chandler that he got to live in. His checklist was right there. Finally, he was going to get a job. Obviously, mom and dad couldn't support him anymore. Maybe he's going to get some life insurance. Maybe he knew, maybe he didn't. But he certainly got to continue on his fake life. He got to keep his girlfriend. People continued to respect him. His friends probably continued to think that he was successful, important. The lies were rinsed and repeated, rinsed and repeated. Now I promise I'm about done, and I'm the last person who talks. The judge is going to talk a little bit more. What he's going to say next is hard to hear in that he has to read off the verdict forms you're going to take back to the jury room with you. Verdict forms are the physical documents for each charge. There's a bunch of charges here. For each one, there's one that says guilty and not guilty, guilty and not guilty, guilty and not guilty. And he actually read them all. And it doesn't make a lot of sense, but he has to do it. But what Ms. Vera is asking you to do is to lie. It is the last lie of Chandler Halderson. His lawyers stood up here and told you to lie for him. Not to do what you swore to do, which is to render a just and true verdict based on.
Look at her. Look at how she's looking.
Reconcile the evidence. If you can find any reasonable hypothesis consistent with the defendant's
objection, say I'm objecting because this guy is just an asshole.
That reasonable hypothesis.
And then take your contempt charge.
That was an accident.
It's only scarier than anything you ever experienced to be held in contempt.
Made what his attorney believes to be the reasonable decision to chop apart those bodies and hide them around the state. What you're being asked to do is to lie one last time. It is the experience that everyone in Chandler Halderson's life has had to deal with, and now it's yours.
You are not being asked to lie.
Sure, Bart and Krista dealt with it.
Oh, yeah, so I told you. Yeah, I got blocked by Shatner.
Mitchell is dealing with it.
Yeah, he...
Brett is dealing with it.
He actually does his own Twitter.
The Hogan They're kids.
It was a few years ago.
They've had to deal with it. Sesto had to deal with it.
Somebody said something like...
Linsmeyer, the neighbor, had to deal with it.
I'll tell you after this guy gets done.
Deputy Seeley, Deputy Nelson, Deputy Shaw, Deputy Sims.
I thought this guy was going to be done right now.
Deputy Hendrickson. Deputy Collins LaFleur. Everyone who has interacted with this man for years has had no other experience other than being lied to. And now it's you that's going to be lied to by his attorneys. Asking
Okay,
you.
I'm going to object now.
Good, good, finally. What did they do? Why did it turn the sound? They won't play the objection? You know, here's something to think about. When he's calling her a liar, by not objecting, She's like, I mean, you're letting that happen, right? So some people you're going to think, oh, well, she didn't say no, she wasn't a liar. For her to be a liar, and this is what people don't understand about attorneys. People always say, oh, attorneys lie. Attorneys pay a lot of money to not lie. Okay. Like they will lose their bar license. You got to do so much stuff. Your license, it probably costs you $5,000 a year, plus the amount of time put in. You have to do classes and whatnot every year just to maintain your bar license. It's absolutely ridiculous. And for her to sit there and not object, or for him to claim this, you can make a case against her, against the bar, to have hearings and have her disbarred. That's absolutely. I've never seen an attorney do that to another attorney. It's just that's crazy. And then her he's gonna say, all right, so the prosecutor's gonna say, I'm trying to paint a picture, all stuff. She's saying this has nothing to do with anything. Like, I mean, first of all, it's an accusation. It's a serious accusation. I think the judge is saying right now, how is you calling her a liar over and over again have anything to do with closing arguments? How's that doing anything? All they've done now, if they've done anything, they've planted a seed of doubt, I would say, in a jury. Because I would think it would say, I don't know jurors, okay? I don't know these jurors, I don't know anything. But I'm just saying, like me personally, I'll sit there and go, well, if the case was so good, if you had such a great case, why did you call the defense liars? I don't know. I mean, he actually could face bar complaint for that. That's just okay. So so I got blocked by Shatner on Twitter, and this goes back. It was a long time ago, and he actually Rush Limbaugh. I was listening to him. And Rush said, if you're not following Shatner on Twitter, you need to, because Shatner does his own tweets. He doesn't. Most people pay somebody, as part of their agents' fees to maintain a Twitter thing. Shatner's real on there, and I don't know what it was. And somebody was complaining and about their life. And Shatner said something nice to him. And then the person says, you are so kind, or some other person jumps in and says, you are so kind and wonderful. And so, and caring. I wish that you could be our president instead of Trump. And this was like right when Trump got a license. I don't even know if he was in office yet, been sworn in. And so I made the comment. I said, well, unfortunately, or no, maybe I said, I think, well, fortunately, Shatner, just like Ted Cruz, could never be president because he's Canadian. And then, something like, sorry, thanks for trying, or something like that. Anyway, it went on a little bit longer than that. And I don't remember what all happened. It was like, he's like, oh, how could you say that? And so I'm like, well, it's the truth. And you don't need to be stupid about it. You don't need to ignore facts. And the next thing I know, Shatner had blocked me. I was kicked out of that conversation. I was like, are you serious? And I'm a huge Shatner fan. I love Captain Kirk. Now there's another one that blocked me. This is the best one. I can't even remember her name. Oh gosh, what was hang on a second, let me look up this chick. Where did my stuff go? I just need a new page. What is her name? Nicole. Oh, it's the new. Oh, Yvette Nicole Brown. That's her name. Right? Let me make sure it's her. Yvette. Y-V-E-T-T-E. Nicole Brown. Yeah, that's her. Yvette Nicole Brown. So let's see her IMDb. I don't know what she's been on. She does Walking Dead stuff, or she used to. She was in Avengers. I didn't know that. Family Guy, 6 episodes. Fairfax, Muppets Haunted Mansion. Well, she's been on a lot of stuff, but nothing. I do not. She was on the TV series Mom as Nora. Avengers Endgame, she was a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. Oh, we're coming back.
Thanks for your patience, folks.
All right, this is going to be good.
I want to clarify that, of course, within the instructions, as far as closing argument not being evidence, closing argument being opinions expressed by counsel for both the state and the defense to you about their view of the evidence and so forth. My understanding is the state was not meaning to suggest that counsel for the defense had lied or in any way was urging you to do anything other than uphold your oath and to follow the law as instructed in your deliberations. If you could continue. Thank you.
Boy, that judge
Those
just
verdict forms are
saved
gonna fill
him.
out. Every single one of them represents something that happened. And what we're asking you to do is to dig through that evidence, dig through your notes, dig through your memory of what happened. What happened here wasn't an accident. What happened here
Defamation.
wasn't a mistake.
Yeah, it is. Basically,
What
think of it as
happened here
defamation
wasn't
on
innocence, lies,
the lies.
coincidences. Mr. Halderson's statement to the police that my mom has nosebleeds and my dad, he just scratches his psoriasis. It doesn't explain his blood on a bullet fragment. It doesn't explain all of their blood on the fireplace. It doesn't explain the Halderson's teeth in the ash trap. It doesn't explain their skull in the ash trap and placed on top of the fireplace. What I'm asking you to do is to look for the truth.
Can you imagine finding
and not
teeth?
to negotiate. Not take the idea that, well, there's one piece of paper there where he signed a document and says he lied to the cops, and maybe that's good enough. These people were killed. This is a first-degree intentional homicide.
This guy's trying to step back from what he's saying. That's he's
is a first
said
degree
lied
intentional homicide.
like 2 or 3 times since coming back,
You cannot shoot
and every
someone in
time
the
it's
back.
been about where
You cannot chop them up.
Chandler
You cannot scatter their
lied.
remains and come to any other conclusion. And there is only one person who did those things here.
The attorney,
And that
you're
is
gonna say?
Chandler Halderson. And we're asking you to find him guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. As counsel indicated, I have a little bit more to instruct you. And I do need to review with you the verdict forms. When I'm finished with this, we will draw the 5 names of those individuals who will not be participating in the deliberations.
So what that means is they have, so you have 12
Now, members
jurors,
of the
right?
jury,
Well, they
the
pick, say,
duties
like
of counsel
17.
and the court
That way,
have
and
been
all 17
performed.
have to be there. That
The case
way
has been
if
argued by
one of them
counsel.
can't make
The
it
court
through the
has
trial or
instructed
whatnot.
you regarding the rules of law, which should govern you in your
You
deliberations.
still get to
The
a
time has come
termination.
when the great burden of reaching a just, fair, and conscientious decision of this case is to be thrown wholly upon you, the jurors selected for this important duty. You will not be swayed by sympathy, prejudice, or passion. You will be very careful and deliberate in weighing the evidence. I charge you to keep your duty steadfastly in mind and as upright citizens to render a just and true verdict on all counts. You are to decide only whether the defendant is guilty or not guilty of the offenses charged. Any consequences of your verdicts are matters for the court alone to decide and must not affect your deliberations. You will be provided with 16 verdict forms. There are 2 forms for each count, and the count to which they apply is identified on each verdict form at the top. So I'll show you each of these. As to count 1, there are 2 verdict forms. One reads, "We, the jury, find the defendant Chandler M. Halderson not guilty of first-degree intentional homicide as to Bart Halderson, as charged in count 1 of the amended information." The second verdict form for count 1 reads almost identically, "We, the jury, find the defendant Chandler M. Halderson guilty of first-degree intentional homicide as to Bart Halderson, as charged in count 1 of the amended information." There is a space for the date of the verdict. There is a space for a signature of the presiding juror. As to each of these 8 counts, only one verdict form should be returned. The other verdict form should be left blank. The presiding juror only should sign and date the verdict that represents the verdict of the jury as to that count. For count 2, one verdict form reads, "We, the jury, find the defendant Chandler M. Halderson not guilty of providing false information about a missing person as to Bart A. Halderson, as charged in count 2 of the amended information." The corresponding verdict form for count 2 reads, "We, the jury, find the defendant Chandler M. Halderson guilty of providing false information about a missing person
Guys,
as
I
to
got
Bart
2
A.
major things
Halderson,
coming in
as
today.
charged in
It's
count
gonna
2
help
of
so
the
much with me
amended
doing
information."
streams. I'm so
The
excited.
2 verdict forms for count 3. One reading, "We, the jury, find the defendant Chandler M. Halderson not guilty of mutilating a corpse as to Bart A. Halderson, as charged in count 3 of the amended information."
I say he mutilated a
And the
corpse,
second
possibly.
reading, "We, the jury, find the defendant Chandler M. Halderson guilty of mutilating a corpse as to Bart A. Halderson, as charged in count 3 of the amended information, with date and signature lines on both. As to count 4, the 2 verdict forms read, "We, the jury, find the defendant Chandler M. Halderson not guilty of hiding a corpse as to Bart A. Halderson, as charged in count 4 of the amended information." And the second, "We, the jury, find the defendant Chandler M. Halderson guilty of hiding a corpse as to Bart A. Halderson, as charged in count 4 of the information, with a date and signature space on both verdict forms. As to count 5, which is identified again on the verdict forms, "We, the jury, find the defendant Chandler M. Halderson not guilty of first-degree intentional homicide as to Krista R. Halderson, as charged in count 5 of the amended information. And we, the jury, find the defendant Chandler M. Halderson guilty of first-degree intentional homicide as to Krista R. Halderson, as charged in count 5 of the amended information, with signature and date lines for both. Count 6, as identified on the verdict forms, "We, the jury, find the defendant Chandler M. Halderson not guilty of providing false information about a missing person as to Krista R. Halderson, as charged in count 6 of the amended information." And the corresponding form, "We, the jury, find the defendant Chandler M. Halderson guilty of providing false information about a missing person as to Krista R. Halderson, as charged in count 6 of the amended information, with again date and signature spaces on both forms. As to verdict count 7, as identified on the forms, "We, the jury, find the defendant Chandler M. Halderson not guilty of mutilating a corpse as to Krista R. Halderson, as charged in count 7 of the amended information. And we, the jury, find the defendant Chandler M. Halderson guilty of mutilating a corpse as to Krista R. Halderson, as charged in count 7 of the amended information, again with the signature spaces and dates on each. And finally, the 2 verdict forms as to count 8, as identified on each. "We, the jury, find the defendant Chandler M. Halderson not guilty of hiding a corpse as to Krista R. Halderson, as charged in count 8 of the amended information. And the second, we, the jury, find the defendant, Chandler M. Halderson, guilty of hiding a corpse as to Krista R. Halderson, as charged in count 8 of the amended information. Both of those, again, with a space for the date and the signature of the presiding juror. It is for you to determine whether the defendant is guilty or not guilty of each of the offenses charged. You must make a finding as to each count of the amended information. Each count charges a separate crime, and you must consider each one separately. Your verdict for the crime charged in one count must not affect your verdict on any other count. This is a criminal, not a civil case. Therefore, before a jury may return verdicts which may legally be received, the verdicts must be reached unanimously. In a criminal case, all 12 jurors must agree in order to arrive at a verdict. When you retire to the jury room, select one of your members to preside over your deliberations. The presiding juror's vote is entitled to no greater weight than the vote of any other juror. If you need to communicate with the court while you are deliberating, send a note through the bailiff signed by the presiding juror. To have a complete record of this trial, it is important that you communicate with the court only by a written note. If you have questions, the court will talk with the attorneys before answering, so it may take some time. You should continue deliberations while you wait for an answer. The court will answer any questions in writing or orally back here in open court. When you have agreed upon your verdicts, have each one signed and dated by the person you've selected to preside. After you've reached verdicts on all 8 counts, the presiding juror should notify the bailiff that the verdicts have been reached. We will assemble everyone back into the courtroom and the jury will enter the courtroom. The verdict forms, as well as my instructions,
How long do you think that'll take?
Will be within this folder. And obviously, the presiding juror should carry the folder into the courtroom when you return to the courtroom.
I'm going to stop this stream.
That will
and then I'll get set up for another one because I bet you it doesn't. They're not ready till tomorrow because they're going to go to lunch
once we've assembled
first.
And gone back on the record, ask the presiding juror if the jury has indeed reached verdicts on all 8 counts. Assuming the answer is yes, I will ask the presiding juror to give the folder to Randy and he will provide it to me. Unlike on TV or sometimes on movies, jurors or the presiding juror does not read the verdicts. I take care of that. However, after the verdicts have been read, I will ask each juror individually if those were the verdicts that they agreed upon reaching. In that way, we will have knowledge of the unanimous.
I got to tell slowly the rest of that story.
At that point, then the jury will be able to be discharged. We have 2 things we have to do yet, and one of those is, for me, the most bittersweet moment in any trial because 5 of you have devoted 10 days at least
All right,
to
he's
this
going to
process.
dismiss people
Not to
that we
mention
can't
the days when we were not here, and
So I'm going to mute that. All right. So, Yvette Nicole Brown, Sully, what happened with her is it was during the election, the first one, and do you remember what was her name? Huma? Is that her name? What was that guy's name she was married to? He ran for mayor of New York City. The real creepy guy. It was Hillary's right-hand girl. What did he, and he even didn't he have a weird name? Oh, that's it. Huma Abedin. Huma Abedin. Anthony Weiner. How do you forget Weiner? I forgot Weiner. Anthony Weiner. So, yeah, what was his alias? That's what I want to know. That was awesome. Carlos Danger. That's what he called himself, was Carlos Danger. I love that. What a tool. Anyway, Wiener, can you believe, could you say this stuff to your grandfather? Think about that. Oh, Grandpa, so do you remember this guy? Wiener? Oh, jeez. Anyway, so he got caught, after being caught, he got caught again, but this time he was like chatting with like a 13-year-old girl in his underwear while his baby was on the bed, which is like some creepy child stuff. And I had Yvette Nicole Brown, I put up a tweet just all frantically like, I can't believe another presidential election is going to be lost to a sexual scandal, to a sex scandal. Not a scandal. Something. Anyway, I replied back to her. Now think about how many people are replying to this woman. And I reply, I go, well, it's not just a scandal. Or no, like an affair, maybe she said. I was like, it's not really just an affair. This is pretty serious. They're saying it's like child endangerment. She went off on me. Just completely went off. Now, here's the great thing. I was new on Twitter at the time, and I didn't really know how it worked all that great. And so she blocks me on this like Friday afternoon. Then Saturday, I start getting all these tweets from her. And like I had a bell, like so every time there was a tweet, like she tweeted, it came up. And she tweeted all this stuff to me. Like, I don't know, it was garbage stuff. And then she blocks me again when she gets done. Kid you not, Sunday comes, she's tweeting at me again. And I was like, I'm sitting here laughing. I'm like, what is going on that you think I have anything to do with? This is the funniest thing in the world. You're a movie star. You're in LA. I'm sitting in my bedroom. I mean, like, just go do LA stuff as a movie star. It's like, oh yeah, hey, I'm cool. I mean, honest to goodness, live the life. But instead you're worried about what some jabroni you've never heard of before in your life is doing. This is stupid. And it was just horrible. I can't remember if I put my name up as the expert yet or not, because that lit everybody up. But before I was the expert, I was Mr. Plow, because I started my stuff when there's like a huge snow. What happened to my voice? Huge snowstorm. And I was like, The Simpsons, Mr. Plow. And like 2 or 3 times I got called like Mr. Plow was a racist name. I was like, what are you talking about? You people are weird. And before then, like I was changing my name all the time because I thought it was funny. And then became the expert. And like I've got less than 500 people follow me. But if you go through like the people that are following me, there's some like really high profile names. I'm like, oh, well, that's pretty impressive. Well, I'm just going to keep the names that way. You just always know. And it was funny because I've always had the TriStar for the Tennessee. I did my version of the gray and orange. And then I started doing the expert when I started doing YouTube, because I was like, I'm just going to keep it as a brand. But anyway, yeah, so I don't remember what I was back then. But yeah, she got Yvette Nicole Brown. She blocked me too. But the Shatner one was the best. Like, he never said anything. He did not like the fact that I told him that he could never be president of the United States, because he, much like Ted Cruz, were Canadian. So anyway, that's it. Yeah, Mr. Plow. What was the other one? It was Mr. Plow, and what was Barney on this? I love The Simpsons. Plow King. Plow King was Barney. I love The Simpsons. Anyway, all right, guys. Well, listen, I'm going to jump off here and reset all this so it has Theodore Edgecomb taken off. And we are just waiting on jury answer. So it's jury deliberations. They're going to be taking lunch, so it's going to be an hour. I don't think it'll happen until tomorrow. But I'm going to do some updates. Evidently, when I read Reddit, that is a big pull. So anyway, listen, love you guys. Thanks for checking me out today. Sorry, the Edgecomb thing died. I'm going to have to, maybe I'll do a video on that so you understand what I'm talking about. But yeah, it was yesterday. There were 3 people streaming it. It was myself. It was some person I've never heard of before, and Nick Rakita. Nick Rakita has like 380,000 subscribers. And anyway, we got blocked. So it's weird. It's a weird world. All right, listen, y'all. Be good. Be safe. If it's snowing where you are, stay warm. It was supposed to snow here, and it stopped. And yeah, that's it. That's my day. Finally ate my breakfast, and I know I've got a dog who's upset and wants to go play. All right. Till later on, guys. Thanks again. Don't forget to subscribe, like, all that good stuff. And this is great. I really love you guys. This is fun. This is a lot of fun. All right. Peace.